Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. And this story of a lightning user? Ecchi commented beside. What do you think? Smoker turned to the person behind them as they looked at the destruction in a specific building on the island. If it's really a lightning logia, its user has been without the power for hundreds of years, so it will be quite troublesome. Kyuzen commented with his cold breath. Hina finds it strange, why did they attack just this building? And more than 5 islands were targeted in the same way. This was a smuggling depot, a place used by the underworld to trade illegal weapons and slaves. Kyuzen said, looking at the place. As an admiral, he had to have this information memorized. The Marines knew about it, but since it's under the name of a 7 warlords of the seas, they couldn't act so easily. That's terrible. Ecchi commented. The Marines were patrolling the area, looking for survivors and removing some debris. They found drugs and weapons in the destroyed structures, even leading to the arrest of some of the local guards. At least, Garp's grandson didn't destroy the city. Kyuzen admitted, but soon felt something with his observation hockey and looked up at the sky. Anyway, let's capture Mugiwaras is a half-billion criminal. Smoker said. Hina just needs to find him. Hina said, and Full Body next to her looked with hearts in his eyes at his superior. No one had noticed the admiral's behavior behind them, who continued to look at the sky, until he decided to speak. That's not necessary, he's already found us. Kyuzen commented, and at that moment a meteor fell from the sky in front of them. Boom. What is this? Ecchi commented, shielding her eyes with her sword from the debris created by the explosion. Look who's here. A voice came from the debris and Smoker looked surprised, already recognizing the owner of the voice. Hina and Ecchi prepared for whoever had arrived, and Kyuzen frowned, not expecting that this pirate would take the action to attack him so openly. Luffy emerged from the debris with his cape flying in the wind and walked towards the Marines with a smile on his face. It was no surprise to him while everyone looked scared at the pirate as he walked towards Admiral Kyuzen. Hello, Frozen Admiral. Luffy announced without losing his smile, and lightning struck beside him. Enel arrived soon after, looking at the others with his usual arrogance. Monkey D. Luffy, a 500 million pirate and Garp's grandson. Kyuzen commented, seeing this figure for the first time. Look, Smoker, as always, good to see you. And who might this lady be? Would you like to go out with me sometime, miss? Luffy greeted everyone and joked. He wasn't serious with Hina, but it was an opportunity to flirt with the enemy. Hina doesn't go out with pirates, she said. Luffy had no reaction to this and looked to the side, seeing Full Body as a subordinate of Hina as Ecchi with Smoker. Full Body, it's been a while, decided to leave East Blue? Luffy commented, and Full Body had veins on his face. You damn pirate, he yelled. Are these people strong? Enel asked, still trying to find someone powerful since he came down with Luffy, but they all seemed weak. Not all of them. That big guy over there can easily defeat you. I want you to take care of those 2. Luffy pointed to Hina and Smoker. Mugiwara, you will be arrested, Smoker said, looking at Luffy. First, take care of Enel, he's a logia like you, while I'll fight the Admiral. I want to see if he lives up to his reputation. You're okay with that, aren't you, Admiral Kyuzen? Luffy commented with a smile. The Marines around them were surprised to see Luffy walking fearlessly and challenging an admiral, as it represented the highest power of the Navy. Did I hear that right? This is really a bit disconcerting. Did that pirate really come to challenge the admiral? What are we going to do? Luffy continued walking towards them, even passing by Smoker and Hina, who had furrowed brows as the pirate treated them like nothing more than air. He continued, but no one stopped him until he was face to face with Kyuzen. You admirals are really tall, Mega Admiral. How is my sister doing in Manafort? I hope she's getting strong, I miss her already. Luffy commented nonchalantly while looking at the man who, even at 210 centimeters, was still not taller than an admiral of 266 centimeters. Kyuzen observed Luffy with a calm expression, though his eyes showed a hint of curiosity. He didn't seem surprised by Luffy's direct and challenging approach, but there was an implicit caution in his look. Your sister is doing well. She's becoming a strong and capable sailor with the training my teacher is giving her and with her grandfather also taking care of her." Kyuzen responded, maintaining his serene tone. Luffy laughed. "That's good to hear. I knew she would be in good hands. So, Admiral Kyuzen, ready for a little confrontation?" Kyuzen raised an eyebrow. "You're quite an upfront person. But know that I will not hold back just because you're Garp's grandson." Luffy nodded, still smiling. "I wouldn't expect anything less from an admiral. But before we start, I have a question." "What is it?" Kyuzen asked, his expression still relaxed. "What do you think of the current state of the Navy? Are they really doing the right thing, fiercely pursuing pirates, and you turn a blind eye to criminal 7 warlords of the seas out there?" Luffy asked, his voice carrying a more serious tone than usual. The people beside fell silent in this conversation, not even breathing as Luffy talked with the admiral. Kyuzen paused for a moment, reflecting on the question. The Navy has its flaws, like any organization. I may not always agree with the decisions made by superiors, but that doesn't change the fact that pirates like you are a threat to the world. Really, you execute any order like a good soldier, don't you? Is that what happened with O'Hara?" Luffy commented, and the atmosphere immediately turned cold. Luffy and Kyuzen stared at each other, each assessing the other. Kyuzen, without any sudden movement, caused the ground under Luffy's feet to start freezing. The ice quickly spread, rising up Luffy's feet. Surprisingly, Luffy made no move to escape or counterattack. He remained still, allowing the freezing to cover his entire body. As the ice enveloped Luffy, turning him into a frozen statue, a calm and confident expression remained on his face in front of the admiral. It was as if Luffy had control and confidence in his ability to escape from that situation at any moment. Kyuzen, observing the scene, showed no surprise. His eyes reflected a mix of respect and curiosity. "You didn't even move. Do you really think you can escape from my ice?" said Kyuzen, his voice tranquil. The spectators around watched in silence, intrigued and a little anxious. They knew Luffy was not an ordinary pirate and that his abilities were extraordinary from the newspaper reports. The question was, how would he respond to Admiral Kyuzen's ice power? Luffy, encased in ice, remained motionless for a brief moment, but then a dramatic change occurred. Suddenly, purple flames erupted from his body, shattering the ice with an intense and vibrant explosion. The flames melted the ice at an impressive speed, freeing Luffy from his frozen prison in milliseconds and sending steam in all directions. Before Kyuzen could react, Luffy was already in motion. With a surprising speed that broke the ground beneath him, he rushed towards the admiral. His fist, wrapped in a dense black aura of armament hockey, was launched towards Kyuzen with brutal force. Kyuzen, sensing the imminent threat, quickly went into a defensive stance, but even with his abilities, he wasn't fully prepared for the impact of Luffy's punch. The punch hit him with overwhelming power, sending him flying backward like a rocket. Kyuzen soared through the air, crossing the space of the port, and crashing into the sea with a loud splash. Upon hitting the water, he caused the entire sea in that small area to surge. A moment later, the sea began to freeze, and in an instant, a vast area of the sea transformed into a frozen, crystalline field. The scene left everyone present astonished. The strength of Luffy, capable of sending a Navy admiral flying with a single punch, and the subsequent reaction of the sea freezing, were testimonies to the extraordinary level of power of Admiral Kyuzen. The Marines, shocked by the turn of events, quickly regrouped. They surrounded Luffy at the port, with their weapons pointed directly at him. The tension was palpable in the air, and the sound of triggers being cocked echoed around the area. The eyes of every Marine were fixed on the pirate, ready to shoot at any sign of threat. Luffy was hit by bullets, which simply did not penetrate his body, stopping upon contact with his skin. "You know that won't work against me, right?" Luffy commented, looking around while remaining calm. He turned to Enel, who was watching everything with his usual expression of arrogance. "Enel," Luffy called, drawing the attention of the former god of Skypia. "I need you to deal with these Marines. But remember, I don't want you to kill anyone." Enel nodded in agreement. He then raised his hands, and an electrical aura began to form around him. With a swift movement, he released a series of controlled electrical discharges towards the Marines. The discharges were powerful enough to incapacitate the soldiers without causing fatal damage. The Marines, caught off guard by the speed and precision of Enel's attacks, began to fall one after the other, struck by the electricity. The gunfire stopped, and weapons fell from the hands of the unconscious Marines. At that moment, a force emerged in the air to confront Enel. Only Smoker and Hino remained in combat and went to face Enel. At that moment, Kyuzen surfaced above the frozen sea, his figure emerging from the icy waters. He had a thin line of blood running down his forehead, a clear sign of the impact of the blow that Luffy had struck. "He's more skilled in hockey than Momonga had detailed in his report." he commented, looking at the blood on his forehead, yet his expression was calm and lazy. Luffy wasted no time and leaped into the air, leaving the port behind and landing smoothly in front of him, sporting a confident smile. "So, Frozen Admiral," Luffy said, looking straight into Kuzen's eyes. "Our fight is about to begin." Chapter 182. Luffy vs. Kuzen 02. Kuzen watched Luffy, whose body was now enveloped in dancing purple flames in front of him, as the ice beneath him began to melt. "You are certainly more dangerous than the reports suggested, Monkey D. Luffy," said Kuzen, closely observing the flames. "Your proficiency in Haki is dangerous, despite being far from the strongest, yet your mythical zone fruit grants you great explosive power. Both impressive and troublesome at the same time." Kuzen continued to speak, no longer as lazily as he might have. With a confident smile, Luffy replied, "I'm just getting started, Admiral. I was never the pirate you guys have in those reports. After all, I never had to use all my strength to deal with the Navy. Maybe you'll be the first?" Luffy suggested. Kuzen gave a slight nod, acknowledging the truth in Luffy's words. "That's evident. But don't underestimate the Navy or an Admiral, grandson of Garp." The flames around Luffy increased in intensity, reflecting his will to fight. "I don't underestimate anyone, Kuzen. But I don't intend to be underestimated either. Let's see how far an Admiral's strength goes. I could just ignore you while passing through the region, but I want to see where my current level is. Then come, show me the power of the greatest rookie of this generation," he said as his body began to wrap in ice. Without further words, Luffy quickly advanced towards Kuzen, closing the distance between them in the blink of an eye. Putting his more fruit model, Amplify Human Devil Fruit ability into speed and strength, he was 30 times more powerful in these two aspects. Both crossed their fists against each other. Kuzen, who always passively freezes his opponents, had to be more aggressive in this fight, and he opted to use Haki too. The Admiral's fist and the pirates created an impact above the ice, breaking everything and creating a powerful blast with dark rays tinged with red, from the armament Haki. Boom. The fists seemed to clash in the attack, with neither of them backing down. Kuzen had more mastery of the armament Haki than Luffy, but he couldn't take advantage of the pirate. His fist continued in the impact, trapped in Haki with ice covering various parts of his arm. On the other side, Luffy had his fist against Kuzen while flames exploded against the enemy, but he couldn't take advantage either. He might be below Kuzen in armament Haki, but had his more fruit model, Amplify Human Devil Fruit, to compensate for deficiencies against this type of opponent. An explosion occurred when the fists reached their limit. Everything within more than 100 meters exploded between the two elements, and Luffy and Kuzen were thrown to opposite sides of each other. While Kuzen appeared like an ice sculpture, Luffy spread his wings and flew upwards, facing Kuzen, and now they would show a battle of elements as he formed fireballs, throwing them at the Admiral. In the next few minutes, that side went into a frenzy with explosions and sounds of ice forming and breaking. The battle was a dance of fire and ice. Luffy, with his punches wrapped in flames and Haki, tried to break Kuzen's ice defenses, while the latter used his ability to create massive ice sculptures and launch icy attacks. With every punch from Luffy, the ice vaporized under the intense heat, only to be quickly reformed by Kuzen's power, giving Luffy a real advantage against the Admiral. At various times, Luffy managed to land direct hits on Kuzen, who used his Haki to minimize the damage. Kuzen, with his superior experience and Haki skill, was able to predict and dodge many of Luffy's attacks, but Luffy's enhanced speed and strength from the more fruit model, Amplify Human Devil Fruit, were a constant challenge. The battle was fierce and balanced, with each fighter testing the other's limits. For Kuzen, it was like fighting a four emperors commander, which put pressure on him. He no longer saw Luffy as a mere rookie pirate. This boy was worthy of being Garp's grandson. The confrontation continued, with the island and its inhabitants witnessing a combat that would surely enter the history of this island in that frozen sea in front of the city. At the height of this round between Luffy and Kuzen, the people of the city saw a huge purple fire tornado explode from the ice. The intense and voracious flames swirled around the place, forming a vortex that rose to the skies, visible from the entire island, even making the city feel the heat. Kuzen, responding to the growing threat, intensified his own power. The frozen sea around them began to crack and explode, sending shards of ice and cold vapor into the air. Kuzen manipulated the ice with unmatched skill, creating complex structures and huge ice spears that clashed against Luffy's flames, creating a thermal shock. With each impact between fire and ice, massive explosions occurred, sending waves of heat and cold in all directions. The island trembled with the force of the confrontation, and the inhabitants looked up at the sky, wondering if those two natural forces were real. Luffy's flames and Kuzen's eyes continued to intertwine in a destructive dance, where fire met cold, creating a symphony of explosions and vapor. As the battle escalated, Luffy decided to increase the intensity of the confrontation. He entered phase 2 of his devil fruit, transforming into an even more powerful and threatening version. So, this is the power that Momonga reported. Kyuzen recognized that Luffy was stronger than the report indicated in the fight against Momonga and Crocodile, but he knew that Luffy had now entered a new level of power with his devil fruit. Luffy advanced with superior speed and strength, keeping his more fruit model, Amplify Human Devil Fruit activated, becoming almost invisible to the eyes of onlookers. The flames enveloping him intensified, becoming wilder and uncontrollable, spreading across the already destroyed ice field and creating a trail of destruction. Kyuzen, recognizing the gravity of the situation, responded with an equivalent increase in his own intensity. The air around him cooled drastically, and immense ice structures began to emerge from nowhere, forming barriers and gigantic spears that projected towards Luffy. Luffy, moving with agility, used moonwalk and his own flames on his feet to further boost speed and mobility, dodging the Admiral's attacks while exploding some, melting everything in his path. In a moment, jumping into the air, Luffy formed a huge sphere and fired it at Kyuzen, causing great destruction that destroyed all the ice around, and the island trembled once again, witnessing the great explosion. Kyuzen, who responded with a massive wall of ice to block the attack, was thrown backward. Hey. This is problematic," he murmured, seeing all the vapor formed by the explosion of the pirates' attack. Even his vision was obstructed with the smoke, but he could still feel Luffy with his haki. "Come on, Admiral, this is getting fun." Luffy appeared above Kyuzen and launched a punch with flames. Kyuzen responded with haki, and their fists collided, resulting in another stalemate. "How about a fight with fencing?" Luffy suggested, drawing ace from its sheath for the first time. "That looks like an interesting sword," Kyuzen remarked. He wasn't a swordsman, but he recognized the sword as a supreme grade just by looking at it. He didn't know ace, so he didn't realize what weapon was in Luffy's hand. Kyuzen opened his hand, and an ice sword formed. He covered it with haki to strengthen it and advanced towards Luffy. The swords clashed, wrapped in haki, and another shockwave with cuts flew in all directions. Boom. The people on the island once again watched the fight between Luffy and Kyuzen with a mix of admiration and fear. Now the fight had shifted to weapon impacts, creating explosions in the air above the ice, which for the most part was already destroyed, giving way to the seawater. One citizen, with an incredulous look, couldn't hide his admiration mixed with a touch of fear. "How is this possible? A pirate fighting on equal terms with an admiral?" he murmured, his voice almost lost in the surrounding noise. Another observer, with a furrowed brow in concern, expressed his fear out loud. "This is unbelievable. If even an admiral can be challenged like this, what does that mean for us? What will happen to the Navy if he loses?" Some, still skeptical, clung to the belief in the Navy's unshakable supremacy. "There's no way an admiral can lose. They are the Navy's greatest force, after all. This pirate, no matter how strong, can't beat him," commented an older man, trying to reassure himself and those around him. Meanwhile, a young man pointed to the chaos at the port, where an ill-faced smoker. "But look there, the fight isn't just between the admiral and the pirate. That other one, with the lightning. He's fighting one of the Navy officers," he exclaimed, indicating the smaller, but equally intense battle happening separately. On the side of the port, with less intense but still significant explosions, Enel continued his fight against the Navy, or specifically against one of them. Enel, with his characteristic arrogance, was facing Smoker. Hina was already on the ground, unconscious from the intensity of Enel's electric attacks. Smoker, on the other hand, resisted tenaciously, his ability to turn into smoke allowing him to avoid much of Enel's electric assault. Enel mocked Smoker as they fought, throwing arrogant and provocative comments. "Is that all you've got, Smoke Man?" he taunted, circling around Smoker with supernatural speed. Smoker could only rely on his Logia ability to continue the fight. "I thought the Logia users of this sea would be more challenging. It seems I was wrong." Luffy had told him about his powers, and after some denial, Enel acknowledged his ability. Smoker, focused and serious, didn't let Enel's provocations affect him. He responded with calculated attacks, trying to hit Enel with his weapon that would work against Logia. Despite Enel being clearly the more powerful aggressor, Smoker didn't seem to give up on the fight. Each time Enel launched a lightning bolt, Smoker turned into smoke, avoiding the blow and counter-attacking with quick and precise jabs. The fight between them was a game of cat and mouse, but no one seemed to be able to harm the other in this confrontation of Logias. Chapter 183, Luffy vs. Kyuzen 03. Explosions continued to echo in the sky above the sea of water and ice, both using moonwalk and their haki-coated swords, exchanging blows that created explosions with shock waves. After clashing with Kyuzen's ice sword, Luffy concentrated his flames in his free hand and punched towards the admiral, expanding his flames like a flamethrower. Kyuzen responded by creating a massive ice dragon, which collided with the fire torrent in the air, causing a colossal explosion that lit up the entire sky, followed by a deafening roar, creating a cloud of steam above the sea. The fight continued amid explosions in the midst of all that cold smoke. Boom. Boom. The two combatants moved with superhuman speed and precision, exchanging blows in the middle of the sky. Luffy, with his speed enhanced by the more fruit model, Amplify Human Devil Fruit, tried to overcome Kuzen's defense, while the Admiral, with his superior haki, blocked and counterattacked with icy precision. The sound of their punches and crossed swords was like thunder, echoing across the island and making the ground tremble. This lasted for the next few hours as ice and flames were being created in the sky. The Marines were waking up, but Luffy did not want to worry about reinforcements arriving in his fight, so he occasionally released his King Zora to knock out anyone who could report the situation to the superiors in the midst of this fight. Conqueror's haki. I'm not surprised. But it's quite troublesome. Kuzen commented, looking more injured from the fight. Don't pay attention to that. Luffy said, appearing in his phase form to continue the fight, equally injured, as fighting an admiral was quite problematic. The fight in these last hours was frenetic and it seemed they would fight for days at this rate. The sea below him was frozen and ablaze with steam, creating a smoke curtain in front of the village. You have in your crew, Nico Robin, right? As the blows continued against each other, Kuzen commented, making Luffy raise an eyebrow at this. That's true, Robin became a valuable companion even before we entered Alabasta. Luffy said, parrying Kuzen's blows. You should get rid of that woman. Kuzen mentioned, and Luffy just snorted. Why would I do that? She is quite precious and trustworthy. All the crews she joined were destroyed, yours will be no different. He said seriously. Luffy recognized that this was the reason for Kuzen finding him as in the original work. That may be true, but Robin has proven to be trustworthy and I believe in her, as do all my companions. We have a common goal and I am interested in the history of the lost century. Luffy commented with a smile, making Kuzen frown. You can't be serious, the world government would never let you go free after discovering this ambition of yours. You don't understand, do you? Luffy appeared, surprising Kuzen with his speed, and delivered a punch to the Admiral's stomach, sending him flying hundreds of meters before stabilizing again. Luffy looked at him with a smile and said, this is my journey, my adventure, I'm a pirate and I do what I want, I don't care what the government thinks of me and my ambitions, I won't bow down to these organizations and no one. Luffy spoke confidently. You don't know what you're talking about, Garp's grandson. Kuzen still insisted. Let me tell you something, Admiral. I've already killed a Tenri Obito in the East Blue, do you think I'm afraid of the government? Luffy admitted, knowing that Kuzen wouldn't easily disclose this information and it wouldn't be long before the world also knew about it, so it was just a matter of time. You killed that Tenri Obito? Kuzen wondered in shock. Everything indicated that it was Monkey D. Dragon and wanted to capture Luffy to use him as a method of catching Luffy. Ironically, Luffy was the author of the murder. Oh yes, if that doesn't prove to you that I'll keep Robin with me and I'm not afraid of any report you talk about her, I don't know what can convince you. Luffy spoke firmly, he had Robin as his woman, how could he let someone speak ill of her? I understand. Kuzen admitted. The fight continued for another 2 hours with explosions as they each injured the other in a clash of haki and elements. Luffy, breathing heavily but still full of energy, paused the fight and looked directly at Kuzen. You know, Admiral, I think this could last for days. Don't you think it would be better to continue this at another time? I don't see either of us winning right now, and I have other things to do. I wanted to test my skills against you and I've seen what I'm capable of compared to a Marine Admiral. Luffy suggested, maintaining a slightly playful but serious tone. You have a point, Monkey D. Luffy. Kuzen responded in a wary tone, he wasn't here to defeat Luffy, just to see the rookie and talk to him about Robin, the girl he once spared. This fight could indeed last for days, and we both have other responsibilities. I'll take your suggestion and let you go for now. But remember, this isn't a truce, just a postponement. Luffy nodded, satisfied with Kuzen's response, as he sheathed the ace and Kuzen dissolved his ice sword. Understood, Admiral. Let's leave our next meeting for another day. It will be a pleasure to face you again. Luffy said, with a confident smile. Kuzen, acknowledging the end of the fight, retreated to the island behind all that steam surrounding them, and Luffy followed him to the city to look for Enel. Reaching Enel, who was still in a fierce clash with Smoker, who was visibly tired, despite not being injured, he was having difficulty breathing after hours. You really are a persistent mortal. Enel mocked, and Smoker growled. Don't you get tired of talking that nonsense? The former captain, who was promoted to Commodore after Alabasta, exclaimed. Enel, that's enough. Luffy called, drawing the attention of the Thunder Fruit model, Lightning Human Devil Fruit user. Let's get out of here. Luffy commented, and Kuzen was a bit away telling Smoker to stop as well. Enel, somewhat reluctant to interrupt the fight, cast a last defiant look at Smoker before turning to Luffy. "Fine, demon. But I was having fun with the smoke man," he replied, with a tone of voice mixing frustration and excitement. "TSK." Smoker clicked his tongue hearing that. "With that, we're leaving. Tell my grandfather and sister I miss them," Luffy said to Kuzen, but he didn't respond. Knowing this was a confirmation, Luffy shot into the air and Enel followed him, turning into a bolt of lightning. "We're letting him go?" Smoker commented, looking towards where Luffy and Enel had left. "I have no choice, the pirate monkey D. Luffy is at the level of an admiral," Kuzen had to admit. "What? How can a rookie be at this level?" Smoker exclaimed, alarmed by this information. "I don't know, Garp's grandson is much more powerful than the reports showed. And Momonga had spoken of him as a hockey beginner. What I saw today was more than that, and it's only been 3 weeks since he left Alabasta." Kuzen was thinking. "I can understand that he's strong for defeating 7 warlords of the seas and a vice-admiral, but to be at an admiral's strength. He can't be getting stronger in such a short time, can he?" Smoker spoke in a reluctant tone, not wanting to believe that someone could become so strong so quickly. "I don't know. But it's strange. He's hiding something, beyond his growth. The reports from Garp and Momonga detail his explosion of strength and speed that not even his hockey of observation can identify. They are theorizing that Luffy is a dual user of Devil Fruit, and I'm starting to believe that after our fight," Kuzen admitted, looking up at the sky. "Dual Devil Fruit user? Really?" Smoker couldn't believe it. "So troublesome. His crew already has 4 mythical zone users and they all have techniques of their styles. If Garp's grandson continues to grow at this pace and he really is a dual Devil Fruit user, I believe the sea will become very turbulent from now on." Kuzen spoke. If he thought Nico Robin would be the downfall of the crew, now he feared Luffy. The boy who didn't even seem to be 20 years old was a threat like he had never seen. The world government and the Marines would be using all their forces to eliminate him with the information Kuzen had. "What are we going to do now?" Smoker asked. "I'm going back to the headquarters and report how I failed to capture Monkey D. Luffy." Kuzen yawned. "Can I go too?" Smoker commented. "You want to go back there finally?" Kuzen asked, curious about his friend. "I realized I'm too weak. I received training manuals from Garp, but I'm not ready to defeat the Straw Hats. I need to get stronger," Smoker admitted. "That's good, we should return then," Kuzen said, and they began to wake the other Marines and calm the town, before returning directly to the headquarters. Meanwhile, in the air, Luffy and Enel were traveling through the sky towards their next destination, Jaya. Enel spoke beside Luffy. "What is it?" Luffy looked at him curiously. Enel had a range of observation hockey that even Luffy envied with his fruit. "Something is approaching us at high speed through the sky," Enel pointed out, and Luffy and he stopped in the air. "That?" Luffy looked in the direction where Enel pointed. He might not identify the person approaching, but he had a very bad feeling about it. On the other side, a blonde-haired man wearing an astronaut helmet and exotic clothing like a Tenri Obito, holding a sword, flew towards Luffy and Enel through the air with moonwalk at high speed. He had finally discovered the location of Straw Hat fighting against the Navy and headed in that direction. "I finally found you," he said without a smile, just heading towards Luffy in the sky. Like a holy knight, he exuded an aura of authority and threat. It was evident he was not there for a casual conversation, he had a clear goal, and Luffy was the target. After hunting him for weeks, he finally saw him in the distance with his advanced observation hockey. Luffy had no idea he was being hunted by an elite of the world government, and he would soon know what a holy knight could do after having fought for a few hours with a Navy admiral. Chapter 184, St. Julius. While the wind of the sky hit the faces of Luffy and Enel at that height. "Who would come like this?" Luffy murmured. He was caught off guard by this presence and felt that whoever is coming is dangerous. "Aren't you scared?" Enel mocked. "Say what you want, just be careful, this person is a challenge, whether you like it or not," Luffy said without taking his eyes off that area. "TSK." Enel scoffed. A moment later, a small dot appeared in the space and it approached quickly to where Enel and Luffy were. It did not take long for the figure to approach. Luffy just observed, seeing that even with a hostile feeling from this person, he seemed to just observe initially and did not attack them directly. Monkey D. Luffy. Pirate with 500 million on your head, a pretty high number for a rookie who entered the Grand Line almost 2 months ago. This person spoke with arrogance and disdain. "Are you a Tenri Obito?" Luffy asked, confused. This man did not look anything like the lazy and weak stereotype. After all, he gave a dangerous sensation, although not as much as Kuzen, certainly more dangerous than the 7 warlords of the seas and a vice-admiral of the Navy. Luffy concluded him to be a Tenri Obito by the clothes and arrogance he exuded. Tenri Obito, those who call themselves gods of this world that you mentioned before? Ono raised an eyebrow. He was intrigued that in the Blue Sea, there was a group of people who claimed to be gods of this world. This angered him. After all, he did not want competition. Watch your words, stranger. The man spoke in the same tone, looking at Enel as if he was unworthy of his attention, and turned back to Luffy. Yes, I am a Tenri Obito. My name is Saint Julius Armango, one of the 20 holy knights of Mary Joyce, he said, making Luffy raise an eyebrow. That's really quite unexpected. I didn't know your kind had warriors. Luffy commented. We are superior to all creatures of this world, but it doesn't mean we can't have powerful warriors among us. After all, in the Holy Knights, we are Tenri Obitos chosen to train when we are not the heir sons of the families, he said. Before Luffy could respond, he was surprised that the Holy Knights were Tenri Obitos, but Enel made a move and went directly to him. Tired of his arrogance, his body approached the Holy Knight. St. Julius did not seem worried about this. With a movement, he dodged Enel's swift attack and delivered a punch, making the god spit saliva, while flying to the opposite side, but his neck was grabbed by the Tenri Obito, taking his sword out of the sheath with the other hand. It was a high-grade sword. I must admit, I am surprised with the Logia user of thunder. It has been lost for centuries, but don't worry, I won't kill you. After all, this fruit is dangerous to be reborn anywhere, he said, and pointed his weapon at Enel's chest with the intention of injuring him and taking him out of combat. But before he could do that, Luffy appeared in front of him with ace embedded with Haki, intending to kill him. The Tenri Obito was quick in anticipating the attack, directing Enel's sword towards Luffy quickly. The impact seemed to make him uncomfortable as he felt Luffy's strength and made him retreat backwards. You are stronger than I expected, pirate. I am also surprised that you did not seem to hesitate in killing me. Even though I am a Tenri Obito, a being much superior to you, he commented. You wouldn't be the first I killed, Luffy commented. So it was you, he said with a dark face. Luffy knew he was talking too much about this to everyone, but he no longer needed to hide it. After all, everyone would know in the next few months. Luffy did not respond and cut the air, holding his sword around Haki. He quickly reached the Holy Knight and the swords clashed. You have a beautiful sword there. It's ace, isn't it? The sword of gold, Roger. He spoke while counterattacking. Luffy parried his attack with equal intensity and smiled. Yes, I hope to improve my fencing with you, since Kyuzen didn't help me much with that, despite our fights, Luffy said, and quickly increased the speed of his attacks. Explosions started to appear in that space with the clashing of swords. Luffy had never fought with such a skilled user of the 6 styles, as this Tenri Obito had spent decades working on the enhanced techniques. Is that? You possess the same techniques that I do? The Tenri Obito seemed quite surprised. After all, only the Holy Knights could possess such techniques, and the pirate in front of him had the same evolved techniques. Who knows why? Luffy just murmured without bothering to answer the man while launching more attacks. Luffy began to dodge Shingen made by the Holy Knight with his fists. He increased his speed and strength by 30 times and seemed to take the fight with an advantage. Ono recovered a bit from the previous attack and just watched the fight from that distance, with slightly frustrated eyes, since he had lost so pathetically to another being who claimed to be a god, and a demon seemed to fight the other part so easily. As the blows rapidly exchanged in the air, Luffy and Saint Julius Armango, the Holy Knight, engaged in an intense and fierce battle. Luffy, with his ability enhanced by the more fruit model, Amplify Human Devil Fruit, managed to keep up with the fast-paced battle, using a combination of fencing and 6 styles. The Tenri Obito, though surprised at Luffy's ability to match his techniques, was not shaken. With his high-grade sword in hand, he executed precise and rapid movements, forcing Luffy to dodge and block attacks with incredible agility. The two combatants engaged in an aerial ballet of attacks and counterattacks. The metallic sound of the swords clashing echoed through the sky, creating a symphony of combat. Suddenly, Luffy surprised St. Julius with an abrupt increase in the intensity of his attacks. He propelled himself with Moonwalk, combining it with his increased strength, and unleashed a series of rapid and powerful cuts. St. Julius could barely keep up, retreating while blocking each blow with Iron Body and Armament Haki. Luffy, noticing an opening, accelerated even more, wrapping his sword in purple flames and hitting the Holy Knight's defense with full force. St. Julius' sword vibrated with the impact, and he was forced to step back, surprised by the strength of the blow. This is getting tough. The Tenri Obito had to admit quietly. This pirate was not easy to deal with alone. On the other side, Luffy was thinking, they were still quite close to where Kyuzen was. If the fight drags on, Kyuzen might intervene as soon as he feels the battle with his Haki. I'll have to finish him quickly, Luffy murmured softly. He took a deep breath, focusing intensely. His muscles tensed as he prepared to release all his power and end this fight quickly. An impressive aura emanated from Luffy. His body began to transform, assuming the final form of his devil fruit. A burst of purple flames erupted around him, forming a fierce and dominating aura. The Holy Knight was thrown back by the impact and heat. St. Julius Armango, stopping a distance away and observing the transformation, widened his eyes in surprise and caution. He had never witnessed the pirate's power, although it was in the reports. Seeing it personally was quite shocking as if it manifested in that sky. He finally transformed into the demon. Onel commented, looking at the distance. Luffy looked down at the now ant in front of him, as flames danced around his body. He wasted no time and prepared to launch his colossal body against his distant enemy. Despite the loss of speed due to the transformation, he skillfully compensated with the power of his more fruit model, Amplify Human Devil Fruit, multiplying his speed by 60 times. This combination of brute force and speed in his 50-meter form. With a burst of energy, Luffy advanced towards St. Julius. The space around him distorted with the intensity of his flame trails, as he cut the air with almost imperceptible speed. St. Julius, despite his skill and training as a Holy Knight, barely had time to react to Luffy's sudden increase in speed. The Holy Knight tried to defend himself, blocking the attacks with his sword and using the 6 styles, but Luffy's agility and strength were too oppressive in this form. Each blow from the pirate was like lightning, relentless and precise, forcing St. Julius to constantly retreat while suffering burns. "I can't keep this up," he murmured as his clothes caught fire. Realizing the growing disadvantage, he increased the intensity of his counterattacks. He moved agilely, trying to find an opening in Luffy's defenses. However, the pirate did not seem to make his task any easier. Luffy's purple flames expanded across the sky, and St. Julius, despite fighting with all his strength, began to feel the pressure of the combat. Finally, finding a gap in St. Julius' defense, Luffy delivered a powerful punch. The impact was so strong that it created a shockwave in the air, sending St. Julius flying backward at a dizzying speed. The Holy Knight was hurled through the sky, losing control of his trajectory. Luffy propelled his wings on his back and skated through the sky after his enemy. He concentrated armament hockey and his flames around his hand, aiming directly at the Holy Knight. What? St. Julius barely had time to react, just managing to raise an arm in an attempt to block the blow as he covered his entire body with armament hockey. Concentrating all his strength and energy, his punch exploded on top of the Tenri Obito, who didn't even know how he died because he was disintegrated the moment the flames with the punch caught him. The ensuing explosion was colossal and thunderous. A wave of energy and fire expanded, illuminating the sky and the sea with intense light in the middle of the day. The flames of Ifrit consumed everything around, leaving a scorching mark in the air. Meanwhile, on the other side, Kuzan was heading to the headquarters with Smoker and Hina when the flames lit up the sky in the distance. "Those flames," Smoker murmured. "Yes, something happened over there, but there are no islands." "There. So that attack was at sea." Hina is concerned, "Shouldn't that scale of attack destroy an entire island?" "You're right, but not even I can defeat that pirate. Let's wait for headquarters to decide what to do." Kuzan spoke, unconcerned. He knew that Luffy was not an ordinary pirate from paradise, and was at the level of an admiral in power, but what could he do? He just put on his eye protector and went to sleep. When the light dissipated, St. Julius Armango lay defeated, his body had turned to ashes in the air. The eyes of Ifrit observed this while he cancelled his transformation. "It looks like you won." Demon Enel spoke, looking at the chaos created by Luffy's flames, and the sea turned to vapor by the intensity of the heat, as Luffy had used enough power to blow up a medium-sized island. "Yes, let's go now, I'm sure we'll have other fights soon." Luffy was not foolish in knowing that the world government would learn of the death of a Holy Knight, and he would soon face Jack and Doflamingo. That's why he didn't bring his crew. He wanted to face these people without risking any of them dying in battle. After all, they were still not ready for these forces and needed to focus on Skypiea. Chapter 185, Jaya 01. In the vast and opulent hall of one of the buildings of Mary Joyce, a tense silence hung in the air, interrupted only by the subtle sound of hurried footsteps and the murmur of worried conversations. Leaders from the highest echelons of the world government were gathered, all with grim expressions, as their eyes turned to a specific object on a central ornate table. There should have been a vivre card, which had burned to ashes. "St. Julius Armango," said one of the agents. "He's dead," said another. Shock and disbelief took over the room. A second Tenri Obito had been killed in such a short span of time. It was something that had not happened for hundreds of years and was not even recorded. Not just a Tenri Obito, but a Holy Knight, one of the highest levels of the world government, second only to the 5 elders in combat strength, said another. Meanwhile, footsteps entered the room, and all the high-ranking officials fell silent. 7 people dressed in the same manner as St. Julius entered the hall. Everyone bowed their heads at that moment. They are the 7 most powerful holy knights, said a short agent. Yes, all of them have the strength of a navy admiral. What will happen from here on out? Let's just bow our heads. They are all Tenri Obito, but also a force that only the 5 elders can command. Another spoke. The 7 mentioned people walked up to one of the 20 stands with the 20 vivre cards of all the holy knights. Now this number had dropped to 19. Saint Julius died to the pirate he was hunting? How can this be possible? Said a female voice. It seems so, Saint Venus, said Saint Mercurio, an elderly man by her side. What are the orders from our superiors? Spoke a tall, thin man, known as Saint Mart. They are discussing what to do, even though the pirate monkey D. Luffy has defeated 2 7 warlords of the seas and a vice-admiral. Saint Julius's strength should have been enough to destroy him, but that's not what happened, said Saint Urano. Shouldn't we go destroy him? Saint Jupiter spoke while posing with her feminine body. Let's wait for the orders, said Saint Terra. What a drag, we've already lost 2 Tenri Obito, these insignificant beings think they got away with this, said Saint Venus. Anyway, let's wait, but I doubt this pirate will last long when we are dispatched, concluded Saint Neptune. Elsewhere. Are you saying that not even Qzn can stop him? Saint Saturn, one of the former holy knights, growled into the Den Mushi. That's what I'm saying. We had a failure in gathering information, Sengoku said on the other side with quite a bit of frustration and continued. Qzn reported that he fought for a few hours, but Monkey D. Luffy could be slightly below Qzn, but his flames gave him an advantage against the Admiral's ice. You're hesitating. What else? Saint Marcus Mars spoke next to him, stroking his beard analytically. It seems the pirate is a dual devil fruit user. When Sengoku said these words, the room froze a bit. A dual devil fruit. That seems to be problematic. What leads to this hypothesis? Saint Ethanburn Venus Jiro asked with his sword sheathed in front of him. All reports show an explosive boost in strength and speed. Monkey D. Luffy has the ability to shrink objects and people, something his zone fruit shouldn't do. Sengoku spoke. First, he has this fruit that we've never seen before, a creature of purple fire, along with the other fruits of his crew. Now he has the ability to possess a second fruit? Said Topman Warcurry. This is concerning, and according to this information, it can't be that fruit, right? Saint Marcus Mars asked. Sengoku remained silent. We must see this, call Impel down, we need to see if its user is dead. If he is, it's that fruit. Saint Shepherd Jupiter speaks severely. Yes. Sengoku responds and immediately hangs up to make a call to Impel down and speak with its director. But these capabilities. It's a bit different from what we know. Ethanburn Venus Jiro comments. Then he developed the fruit, which still makes him more dangerous. Shepherd Jupiter says, looking out the window. Not to mention the user of the Thunder Logia. Marcus Mars comments. So many powerful and unknown fruits in a single rookie crew. Another elder comments. Should we act? Topman Warcurry asks. I don't know if it would be wise. The existence of the Holy Knights has always been a hidden force to act in the shadows besides Cypher Paul's Zero Agent and to protect the Holy Land, but putting so much effort into this might reveal their power to the world, and many of the world government's enemies could use this to their advantage. Jaga Ursha Saturn comments. Then let's wait for now. The news of the Tenri Obito's deaths are still a secret from the world. But we won't tolerate this for much longer. This has just proved that Monkey D. Luffy killed that first Tenri Obito. As soon as we have the chance, we'll act. Ethanburn comments at the end and everyone nods in agreement. Meanwhile, in Sengoku's room, his Mushi rings. Ketcha. Fleet Admiral. We went down to level 6 to investigate that frozen being. Magellan commented, the former user of the More fruit model, Amplify Human Devil Fruit, was so powerful that he was frozen because of him dying and the fruit falling into the hands of a user who might be an enemy of the government and navy. Is he still alive? Sengoku asks a bit cautiously. No. He's dead. Magellan delivers the news. This complicates things. Sengoku concludes with a furrowed brow. Elsewhere, in an outlaw city known as Jaya, not far from where Luffy fought against the Holy Knight, the city seemed anxious. Everyone gathered in the square to see the big shots of the world. First, there was Doflamingo in the middle of the place beating a man among all the fallen bodies on the ground. Whom he was beating at that moment was Usta's Kid, a rookie pirate with a bounty of 150 million. He came to Jaya and left his course in the Grand Line to search for the Straw Hats. He wanted their fame and wanted to show his strength, despite his crew not thinking they could beat the colossal monsters from the newspaper. Usta's Kid entered Jaya and ended up picking a fight with Bellamy, which made Kid beat him without the other party being able to react. As soon as Doflamingo arrived, he knew about this and attacked Kid. His entire crew was beaten. Doflamingo was frustrated. He immediately knew that his bases were being destroyed one after another in the sea, resulting in his wealth being stolen and losses with his business stopping. He wanted very much to go kill Monkey D. Luffy, but when he learned of a user of the Thunder Logia along with a pirate, he became cautious. Even he should know that he could not fight against the two alone, so he waited in Jaya for Jack. In the tense and charged atmosphere, the crowd of criminals continued to gather, everyone's eyes fixed on the brutal scene unfolding before them. Doflamingo was delivering blow after blow to Kid, a man who, until a few days ago, exuded confidence and pride. Now, reduced to a pitiable state, Kid was covered in wounds and blood all over the street. Heavy footsteps resonated in the air at that moment, with a figure appearing near Doflamingo, capturing the attention of the crowd. The murmurs grew in intensity and speculation. "Look, it's Jack, one of Kaido's 3 calamities," exclaimed someone in the crowd, pointing to the imposing figure that approached. The revelation caused an immediate buzz among those present. "Is he that powerful?" questioned another, not knowing much about the pirates of the New World. "You're an idiot, he has a bounty of 1 billion and is one of the strongest forces of a 4 Emperor Su," someone responded, emphasizing the magnitude of the danger that Jack represented. 1 billion? The exclamation was almost collective, with many eyes widening and several mouths opening in astonishment. "They are on a much higher level than us, but what are these figures doing here?" pondered another voice. "We don't know, but something big is going to happen," someone concluded gloomily. As people murmured around, Jack continued his relentless march toward Doflamingo. He continued until he stopped in front of Joker with an intense look. "Joker, let's get out of here and go after the pirate. Didn't you hear the explosion?" "I'm sure it's him somehow," Jack said impatiently. "TSK. You're right, it's better to hunt him down." Doflamingo got off Kid and pointed a threat at him that would decapitate him there, but both Doflamingo, Jack, and Page 1 next to Jack, looked up at that moment. Before anyone in the crowd could react or question the behavior of the big shots, the sky lit up and was abruptly torn apart by a chaotic force of a lightning bolt and a flaming meteor, crashing down onto one of the streets of the city nearby, causing the crowd to run and wonder what was happening. Boom! The explosion was titanic, causing the city to shake violently, sending a cloud of dust and debris into the air with some houses and buildings being destroyed. As the dust began to settle, a silhouette emerged from the wreckage. A man advanced, his figure cutting through the curtain of dust. He wore a billowing cape, adorned with the image of his Jolly Roger on the back. The emblem, recognized by all, belonged to Monkey D. Luffy, the pirate with a 500 million bounty. The crowd, momentarily stunned by the impact, catches their breath upon recognizing the figure who now stands out before them, as this pirate was very famous lately in these waters. Murmurs turn into exclamations of shock and admiration. "It's the pirate Monkey D. Luffy, of 500 million. Someone shouts, their voice cutting through the post-explosion silence like a gunshot. Luffy, with a bandit's smile plastered on his face, shows no fear or hesitation. His eyes gleam, and he advances with confidence, his resolute steps echoing on the still warm ground from the impacts as he approaches the big shots on the island, since the crowd had already made a way for him. Ahead of him, Jack and Doflamingo watched Luffy's approach a bit surprised, and while the pirate continued walking with a smile and confidence towards them. Chapter 186, Jaya 02. Luffy continued walking ahead of everyone as his cape fluttered in the wind. Enel also appeared by his side, a bit battered from the fight with the Holy Knight, but Luffy led the way, passing through the entire crowd. Jaya is known to be a lawless island, where criminals of various kinds gather. The island is always full of fights and parties causing the death of one here and there, however, today was different. Everyone was silent, watching a new figure emerge in this already chaotic field. The star of the moment from the first half of the Grand Line, the pirate with a bounty of 500 million Baileys after destroying various marine bases in the East Blue, revealed to be the grandson of Garp, the marine hero, and the son of Monkey D. Dragon, the world's worst criminal, defeating 7 warlords of the seas and a vice-admiral, causing chaos in Alabasta and disappearing for 2 weeks, was in that town walking calmly towards where Jack, the Drought, and Doflamingo, another 7 warlords of the seas, were. Everyone was silent at that moment. Nobody could breathe while the only sound in the place was of Luffy walking to the center of the place without hesitation. Everyone was wondering what would happen. "Foo-foo-fa-foo. Look who showed up, we were going after you, Straw Hat," Doflamingo said, laughing excitedly. Jack just stayed silent watching the pirate approaching. Page 1, at his side, had a serious look. He believed that Kaido's missions are absolute, and he would do it even if he had to destroy the whole town. Luffy continued walking until he approached them. Enel had arrogance on his side as always and was not intimidated by the size of Jack, and even stared them down like mere ants. "Hey, he's not stopping. It's true. What does he plan?" People murmured as Luffy continued walking forward without stopping as they expected before any fight, and he kept approaching, almost sticking to them. They are passing by them. He disdains them that much? So this is the arrogance of the half-million pirate? Luffy had passed by a stunned Jack and Doflamingo while continuing on his way. He was looking at a person in the crowd. Zahahaha. Why do I think this supernova is coming towards me? A dark-skinned man in the crowd laughed with iconic people by his side. You! How dare you disrespect Doflamingo-sama? Bellamy emerged from the crowd. He was battered after Kid beat him, but even so, he was enraged by his young master being disrespected in that way by the pirate. Doflamingo? He's just a dog of Kaido. I'm not interested in that kind of animal right now. There are more interesting people here at the moment. Luffy commented, shrugging. Everyone without exception opened their mouths and eyes wide at Luffy's comment, while Doflamingo himself had a vein in his forehead almost bursting in anger. Mr. Jack. Does Mr. Doflamingo have a dog zone or something? Page 1 asked a bit more timidly to Jack innocently. Straw Hat. Hearing this was the last straw for Doflamingo, he launched 2 threads with his fingers towards Luffy, who in turn, pointed his arm back and fired 2 finger shots with his hand in the shape of a pistol, destroying and burning Doflamingo's attack. I am here to talk to someone here, take care of you later, dog. Luffy said without turning around as he continued to walk forward. The crowd was even more stunned. It seems this is the first time we've met, Teach, or should I say Blackbeard. Luffy looked at the man in front of him with interest. Zahahahaha. You know me? Pirate Monkey D. Luffy. Teach laughed and looked with interest at Luffy. I do know you, my brother Ace, is looking for you. It's a pity he wants to hunt you down alone, otherwise, you wouldn't end up well. Luffy said and continued. But still, if you want to fight me, you can come, however, I might not hold back and end up leaving Ace without his prey. Luffy commented, looking at the man. You're the commander's brother? Zahahaha. No, I don't want to fight you. I know I'm not ready for that. Teach had to admit, he wasn't foolish, he couldn't face this pirate at his current level. That's good because I still want compensation. Luffy spoke unabashedly, taking out his sword and a devil fruit. Teach frowned at this gesture, and Luffy continued before the other could ask what that meant. Use your darkness and transfer the fruit's power to the sword, that's all I ask. Luffy said, leaving everyone even more stunned. Nobody understood what he meant by that. Teach looked for a moment with dark eyes. How do you know about this? Luffy just shrugged. I know many things, but one reason you'll end up dying if we fight now, so I'm giving you a choice. Luffy spoke, maintaining his gaze with a small smile. He would beat Teach if necessary, but he wanted to put that fruit in Ace. Teach clicked his tongue and ended up doing it. Everyone was surprised when the black hand emerged, and Teach didn't even need to grab the items to absorb in that direction, sucking the sword and fruit into his hand. 10 seconds later, the sword returned with a dried fruit falling to the ground. Here. Teach said frustrated, but he still did it, if it meant not facing Monkey D. Luffy right now. Thank you, I knew I could count on you, Teach. He said, looking at the sword with satisfaction, feeling the power emanating from it. Now Ace looks like a weapon above all other supreme grade ones. Luffy thought, his attention returned to Teach with a confident tone. Teach, I have faith in almost no pirate here, but in you, I expect a challenge at the top. You have the potential to be at the top of this world, and I hope to meet you there for a challenge in my journey. Luffy said, he always saw Teach as a challenge he would face, the sea would be more interesting that way. Well. That's unexpected. Zahahahaha. Teach seemed to change his mood with Luffy's words as his companions just looked on at the exchange between the two like the whole town. I will surely reach the top, nothing can stop me, zahahahaha. Teach continued declaring, now loudly for the entire town, and many began to wonder who this man was, unknown to all, but gaining the recognition from Monkey D. Luffy to be at the top of the sea, while he ignored Jack and Doflamingo just to talk to this man and say those words. People's dreams never end. Teach declared at the end. Luffy smiled and left Teach behind, turning towards Jack and Doflamingo who were staring at him with intense eyes. Luffy sheathed Ace again and walked in their direction. Eno was still by his side, just accompanying Luffy. It's true, people's dreams never end. Luffy also declared loudly to the entire crowd with open arms and faced his opponents. And if people's dreams never end, why should I stop? Luffy finished as purple flames began to burst from his body. The whole place fell silent once again, watching this Human Torch facing two notorious pirates of the New World, while his flames indicated he was ready to fight. Arnold didn't stay behind, making sparks flying from his body. He faced his opponents. Is it against these inferiors that we must fight? He asked with disdain. What's going to happen? One is fire and the other lightning? This island won't be safe for us. As people murmured, Jack stepped forward, cracking the ground as he stared at the flickering flames. Monkey D. Luffy, where's Lady Yamato? Jack asked loudly, and everyone wondered why he would be asking about the vice captain of the Straw Hats. You're here for her, right? Kaido sent you, which makes a lot of sense. Luffy smiled and continued. But tell Kaido that Yamato isn't his property, she's my woman now, so tell my father-in-law I won't even invite him to the wedding. Luffy declared. As Luffy proclaimed his final words, a shockwave ran through the crowd, silencing the conversations and fixing all eyes on him. First understanding that this Yamato, the vice captain with a bounty of 150 million Baileys, is actually Kaido's daughter, and Monkey D. Luffy called Kaido, the strongest creature in the world, father-in-law. Luffy's statement seemed not just a direct affront to the powerful adversaries in front of him but a declaration of war against the four-emperor himself. Jack, known for his brutality and unwavering loyalty to Kaido, narrowed his eyes, surprised by the half-billion pirate's audacity. His normally relentless demeanor gave way to furious eyes. Miss Yamato, your woman. Jack murmured to himself. Doflamingo, on the other hand, seemed surprised by this, now not knowing whether it was because Kaido had a daughter or because Luffy declared the same as his woman. He still did not know the real reason Jack was looking for the crew of the Straw Hat Pirates, but now he understood the reason beyond being after the mythical zone users. Enel, standing beside Luffy, looked around with disdain, his mocking expression as always. These mortals. So fragile in their convictions. He commented. The crowd was divided between fear and admiration. Some started what they had heard. If that was true, Monkey D. Luffy had become Kaido's son-in-law, and he even called the four emperors a father-in-law, something they could never imagine hearing in their lives, but Monkey D. Luffy had declared it, even earning the respect of everyone with the audacity to steal a daughter from one of the world's four greatest pirates. Zahahaha. This guy is really interesting. I'll be looking forward to the day our paths cross again. Teach declared, his laughter echoing throughout the place. After this declaration, the fight was on the verge of starting. Jack would never let Luffy go after those words. Meanwhile, Luffy was ready to throw that mammoth into the sea. Chapter 187, Jaya 03. The tension was heavy in the atmosphere of that street. All the outlaws of Jaya had never managed to emit any sound while Luffy stared down Jack after using such words. His gaze, previously calm and confident, now shone with fierce determination. Are we finally going to fight? Enel asked calmly at his side, already accustomed to Luffy being eccentric. Yes, we're going to fight. Luffy commented. Not a full day had passed and he had already faced a Navy admiral, a holy knight, and now was ready to take on a four emperors commander and one of the strongest 7 warlords of the seas. Keeping his head directly facing Jack and Doflamingo, Luffy began to transform. It wasn't just a physical change, but an alteration in the very atmosphere around him as his flames manifested. The purple flames, previously just sparks around his body, now erupted into a vortex, enveloping him completely. The energy was emanated by Luffy, as he entered phase 2 of his devil fruit, his figure becoming more muscular and with his skin in a purple hue, his 2 horns with his scarlet eye giving him a dangerous aspect to anyone there with his more dominating aura. Jack watched with a mix of surprise and reluctant admiration. So this is your zone. Kaido still wants you very much in his ranks. Boy, don't mock luck, you're just a rookie. Jack stared at Luffy's transformation with interest, but he was not known as someone who could hold back in a fight. Then, let's see if you can live up to your fame, Mugiwara. Doflamingo taunted, his threads already dancing around him in anticipation. Jack stomped on the ground forcefully. As the ground began to crack, he bent his knees to make the first move. Luffy, now completely transformed, faced his opponents with a defiant smile. Let's get straight to the point, let's begin. He said, his voice distorted by the transformation. The next moment, Luffy advanced, the purple flames leaving a trail of light and heat in the air. Enel, at his side, prepared to join the battle, the air charged with electricity. Seeing Luffy approaching, Jack wasted no time and lunged against the half-billion pirate, believing he would easily handle this rookie, but he didn't count on Luffy advancing, activating his more fruit model, amplify human devil fruit 60 times. The counterattack was instant and overwhelming. Luffy launched a punch loaded with power and fire directly at Jack with an explosion that only Jack managed to notice at the last moment with his haki. The impact was catastrophic. Jack, caught by Luffy's fiery fist, was launched like a meteor, the force of the blow catapulting him through buildings and structures as a projectile. Every house in Jack's path was reduced to rubble, a line of destruction marking his uncontrollable flight until he finally collided with a distant mountain and out of the city, the force of the impact echoing like thunder, raising a cloud of dust and debris, while the entire island felt it. Chaos ensued instantly among the spectators. The crowd, which until then had watched the battle with a mix of fear and expectation, panicked, seeking refuge from the unleashed destruction. Screams and exclamations of shock filled the air, as everyone tried to process the magnitude of the power of the beings in front of them. What is this? We can't stay here. The island is going to be destroyed. Is this the power of New World pirates? This is absurd. We are just ants, let's leave the island before we get caught in the fight. Is this the power of Straw Hat? He sent a 4 Emperor's commander flying. What? Doflamingo and Page One could not hide their surprise at what they witnessed in front of them. They knew Jack would not fall just by that, but seeing such a scene was really surprising. This was. Doflamingo, with his usual expression of nonchalance, now sported a look of genuine surprise. He actually launched Mr. Jack. While Page One showed a rare hesitation looking at Luffy landing on the ground after launching Jack. Luffy looked at the two remaining in front of him and gave a small smile. Enel, take care of the guy with the purple hair. I'll handle the blonde-haired guy. Enel did not respond to Luffy but looked with interest at his potential opponent. Luffy wasted no more time, he rushed toward Doflamingo. In the blink of an eye, he adjusted the power of the more fruit model, Amplify Human Devil Fruit, shifting the focus from brute force to staggering speed, multiplying it again by 60 times. The change was instantaneous. Luffy became a blur even to his adversaries, his speed so extreme that the space around him seemed to distort, and Doflamingo's haki could not keep up with his speed. Doflamingo tried to prepare, however, Luffy's speed was such that Doflamingo barely had time to react before receiving an explosive punch. The impact sent the 7 warlords of the seas flying like Jack, though not out of the city. Buildings were destroyed with Joker's body. Doflamingo. Bellamy watched the scene in disbelief while shouting. Page One, on the side, tried to attack Luffy since he had no choice, but at that moment, a lightning bolt struck directly on top of him. Boom. I hope our fight does not end here, mortal. Enel appeared in the sky with a flash and looked at the spot where he had struck Page One with lightning. He emerged from the wreckage quite singed but still well, his body with an ancient zone giving him a lot of resistance to that attack from Enel. You're going to pay for this, he said as his body transformed into his dinosaur zone. Montana Blink Cricket, a resident distant from the hustle and bustle of the city and immersed in his own explorations and studies on the legendary Golden City, felt the earth tremble under his feet in a corner of the island, followed by an explosion. Initially, he attributed the phenomenon to something natural, perhaps an isolated earthquake. But, as the vibrations became more intense and the frequency of explosions increased, Cricket realized that this was something out of the ordinary. Rising from his map spread out on the table, he walked to the entrance of his dwelling, looking in the direction of the city. The horizon was marked by columns of smoke and the occasional glow of distant explosions, illuminating the sky like lightning in a nighttime storm. The mountain on the side of the island was collapsing. What the hell is going on there? He muttered to himself. Is it the Marines? Or another band of pirates causing havoc? He asked, but he was not keen to find out, as he saw that was a battlefield not meant for him. Meanwhile, in the center of the chaos, as people still frightened ran looking for shelter, Doflamingo burst out of the debris from where he had fallen, taking off to the sky. He had a bleeding forehead and his clothes were quite dirty from the punch by Luffy enhanced with haki and his devil fruit. Mugiwara. Doflamingo grumbled as he seemed a bit battered by the last hit. Come on, Joker, I hope you didn't leave the New World just to get beaten up, did you? Luffy commented with a smile from the ground, as the flames burned in his transformation. This is madness. We need to get out of here while we can, shouted one of the inhabitants, his voice laden with panic as he ran to take cover. Where is the Navy when we need them? These pirates are going to destroy everything we have, exclaimed another, expressing the frustration and fear he felt as he saw his home and life being destroyed by a fight that transcended his understanding. But you're a pirate too, you idiot. Another exclaimed as he ran. I said this island wasn't safe with these people around. These pirates are monsters, destroying everything in their path, lamented another person. I've never seen anything like this. Mugiwara is a pirate worth over 500 million, his bounty can't be right. And he's not even alone. Who's that other one controlling the lightning? Questioned the young man. Beside Luffy, the ground exploded, but his gaze did not leave Doflamingo nor was he bothered by what was happening around him. The fight between Enel and Page One intensified around them. Enel was trying to immobilize the transformed renegade, but Page One had speed and strength with his haki. Taking advantage of a moment of distraction from the Logia user of lightning, Page One concentrated haki in his fist, mercilessly heading towards Enel. The attack caught Enel by surprise, feeling his stomach sink with the force of the boy in front of him as he fell backward. Hey, you're going to lose again, Enel. 3 fights and no wins since you came to this sea. That's disappointing for a man who claimed to be a god until recently and remains arrogant. Luffy mocked him, as Enel emerged from the debris created by his body. TSK. I don't know how you people down here can do these things, but I'm not going to lose. He growled as his body enveloped in lightning and launched back into the fight against his current adversary. An explosion happened outside the city, and Jack emerged from that mountain he had been thrown into in his mammoth transformation, running towards the fight at that very moment. This is getting interesting. Luffy smiled watching the mammoth crossing the city, destroying everything in its path, making a way to face Luffy with all his strength, while everyone ran to not be crushed by the mammoth. Doflamingo did not stay behind. He twisted some threads in the air and launched an attack against Luffy, who just gave a sidelong glance to the attacks coming in his direction. Luffy distributed his strength and speed 30 times for each aspect and lunged forward. The city began to enter into fire explosions on one side while on the other the force of ancient zones and a Parimsha user of threads tried to fight against the two opposing elements. Chapter 188, Jaya 04. The battle between Luffy, Doflamingo, and Jack intensified over the next few hours, transforming the city of Jaya into a chaotic battlefield where the devastating power of the pirates was unleashed without restraint. As the fight progressed, destruction spread, buildings collapsed under the colossal power of the combatants, and the inhabitants fled in despair, unable to remain in that kind of fight, with many taking their boats and leaving Jaya immediately. Boom. 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 Titanic explosions were heard throughout the island as it experienced minor tremors. Debris and smoke rose in the midst of the chaos-ridden city, when suddenly Luffy was sent flying like a projectile, colliding with one of the few structures still standing in that part of the city. That was a nice headbutt. Luffy murmured as he rose from the debris. Suddenly threads started to move towards him, cutting everything in their path. He quickly stood up and exploded everything around him with flames, dodging the threads and burning some. The space around that building exploded into a hot tornado of purple flames, and soon after, a mammoth ran to that location. Luffy saw Jack approaching as he filled his head with armament hockey. Luffy, seeing the mammoth almost upon him, planted his feet on the ground while using his arms to hold back that calamity. Jack's impact was like a shockwave, where Luffy had distributed his more fruit model, amplify human devil fruit in defense and strength this time. He was dragged across the ground while trying to hold Jack. The ground beneath him began to dig with his own feet as he was dragged. Jack seemed to have accepted the pirate's challenge and did not seem bothered by the flames on his skin as he fought against the opposing force of the Ecchi, dragging him out of the structure and colliding with everything in his path, heading towards the part of the city not yet affected by the fight. Run, they're coming this way. Quick, to the boat. We have to leave the island. As people entered into despair, buildings and houses exploded with Jack dragging Luffy while the latter tried to stop the advance. People were thrown away with the force of the impact. At one moment, Jack realized he was losing speed. Impossible. He murmured. It seems I'm getting the hang of it. You're really powerful, Kaido's commander. Luffy commented as he was stopping Jack. Finally, he managed to stop Jack just by using strength against the mammoth after making a line through the city. Luffy's muscle seemed to increase as he stood with Jack using his strength. The mammoth began to lift off the ground. Jack could not believe what was happening. You're strong and heavy, but I can overcome that. Luffy commented with a small smile. The people who were still watching this scene opened their eyes wide and looked with comic expressions at it, while the mammoth was lifted off the ground followed by the 2.1 meters tall man. What? The scream was collective. Even Doflamingo from a distance seemed with a furrowed brow. Elsewhere, as all this happened, Page 1 and Enel fought intensely. The fight was not as large in scale as Luffy's, but Enel knew how to put on a show with lightning constantly falling from the sky onto the transformed dinosaur. Both seemed injured. Despite Page 1 not having as much destructive power, his body was powerful, and he had good mastery over Haki, making even the Thunder Logia have quite a hard time dealing with it and even taking many hits. I can't believe there are so many powerful mortals in this sea. Enel had to admit, until now, with Luffy and him destroying the underworld bases, everything was quiet, but the moment Luffy started facing strong opponents, Enel had never won a fight. In some they fought until it mattered, in others he lost badly. He wasn't even facing the worst of enemies at the moment and seemed to be at a stalemate against this lizard for the last few hours. No. I will not lose to this inferior lizard. Enel growled, and the sky thundered with a rain of lightning over Page 1. Boom. 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 While the lightning fell on one side of the island and everyone seemed quite scared by it, Luffy still held Jack above the ground. Have you ever heard of Dumbo, Jack? Luffy asked. Dumbo? Jack questioned. Yes, the story of the flying elephant. Would you like to be one too? I am a mammoth. Whatever, just fly. With those words, Luffy used all his accumulated strength and launched Jack into the air, who was quite dazed as he flew upwards. Luffy, watching Jack ascend, began to accumulate power and flames started to surround him, while a hurricane of flames manifested hundreds of meters high, even covering Enel's lightning with amethyst light. What is this? What's happening? Many pirate ships that fled from Jaya looked towards the city where the torrent of fire had been created. Suddenly, with a huge cloud of smoke and debris, a giant shadow appears within it. That's the mythical zone transformation from the newspaper. Monkey D. Luffy has transformed into his giant beast. Zahahahaha. This guy is really powerful, I can't wait to lay my hands on that power too. Teach in his canoe with his companions said excitedly. He knew he could not face that monster now, but in the future, it would be different and he would take Monkey D. Luffy's power. Roar! Ifrit roared in the middle of the island, making everyone cover their ears as they didn't want their ears bleeding with the booming sound. Lifting his head, he saw Jack still flying upwards and reaching the limit. He just watched Jack returning with gravity to the ground. Jack, in addition to still falling, was more dazed by the 50 meters transformation in front of him, much larger than him with his 10 meters. Luffy wanted to finish Jack, but had to take care of Doflamingo so he wouldn't interfere. He charged a flame in his hand and threw it directly at the 7 warlords of the seas in the air. The flames quickly divided and Doflamingo tried to dodge that attack, but after the first ones, he could not dodge the colossal fireballs hitting him and throwing him to the ground like a meteor. Boom! With Doflamingo out of commission for the moment, Ifrit lifted his head and waited for Jack to approach. Luffy opened his mouth and began to accumulate flames. What is he doing? Jack, seeing this, became alarmed. Flames began to accumulate for a big Ifrit strike and Jack could do nothing but fall, since he didn't know techniques like moonwalk. Luffy charged his power in his mouth and as soon as Jack was in front of him, he released a stream of fire illuminating the entire island while the flames flew towards the horizon even after passing the entire island. Jack saw that strike coming towards him without being able to do anything but be covered by the scalding heat of the flames while he covered his body with haki to protect himself. The explosion generated by Luffy was so powerful and luminous that everything around became insignificant in comparison. The light emitted by his purple flames outshone the sun, bathing the island of Jaya and the surrounding waters in a surreal amethyst light. The sea reflected every spark and flame, creating a visual spectacle that seemed to connect the sky and the sea. People, both on the island and on boats that hurriedly moved away, stopped to witness this moment of unimaginable power as the purple line of flames cut across the sky. Many wondered if they were witnessing the power of a deity, while others feared that the end of all of them was near. The explosion of the flames of chaos even distorted the air, as they consumed even the air atoms. He did this to a New World pirate? Exclaimed one of the spectators, his voice trembling. I've never seen anything like it. Murmured another, his eyes wide reflecting the purple flames that lit up the sky. The flames continued like lightning until Ifrit stopped launching them. Kilometers away from the island, where the flames still traveled, a Jack appeared in his untransformed form. He fell while his body was charred but still intact. He seemed unconscious as he fell into the sea. With just a small explosion of water, Jack sank into the sea. Back on the island, while Luffy looked at the man falling into the sea, a group of pirates who stayed on the island wearing barbaric clothes, which were the symbol of the beast pirates, were shocked by this development. Mr. Jack flew into the sea? He was defeated. What will we do? What can we do? Do you think we can face that thing? One of them pointed towards Luffy still in his transformation covering the entire city. Call Boss Kaido, we must ask for instructions. Said another. Luffy, oblivious to all the conversation on the beast pirate's boat, looked towards another part of the city, where purple flames were spreading. There a severely injured Doflamingo emerged, with a furrowed brow. Boom. Suddenly, the ground trembled behind Doflamingo, and he saw the huge shadow looking at him at that moment. He had made a great mistake. If he thought he could handle the Straw Hat crew and even more so with Jack by his side before, he realized now that he was quite mistaken, as Monkey D. Luffy had shown himself to be a power above a 4 Emperors commander and the only thing Doflamingo could do now was try to escape, but the problem was how that creature was looking at him with its scarlet eyes, as if seeing his prey defenseless for a slaughter. On the other side, when Luffy's explosion happened, carrying Jack straight to the sea, Page 1 looked alarmed. Mr. Jack. He shouted a bit scared, and that was his mistake. While he had been distracted at that moment with the explosion of Ifrit, Enel took advantage of this time to appear behind him and play his drums. Won his gold staff, he launched his point-blank attack against Page 1. 100 million volts. A lightning laser covered the dinosaur entirely, making him be hit forcefully and fly directly to the middle of the city unconscious and falling defeated while the lightning continued destroying everything in its path. Chapter 189, Jaya 05. As Enel's attack lights up the island and Page 1 loses consciousness in the air after taking the hit, his body now a mere object in freefall, drops amidst all the destruction. On the other side of the town, standing before Doflamingo, Rising like a mountain of fire and fury, is Ifrit. Luffy calmly stares him down, flames breathing out of his nostrils in this transformation. Doflamingo, always confident in his abilities, refuses to succumb to fear. With a defiant smile still clinging to his lips, he prepares to fight this monster. The air around him vibrates with the tension of his conqueror's haki, as he launches sharp threads towards the fire giant. However, the power difference is now clear with Luffy in this form, not even moving to receive Doflamingo's attacks. The threads hit his skin, but Ifrit's rocks do not even suffer damage, making the 7 warlords of the seas frown even more at this. Seeing it was futile, he only thought of one thing. I must escape. He soared into the sky with the intention of leaving the island, but the flaming shadow stood in his way. Before Doflamingo could react, Luffy punched him with haki and flames, sending him flying back to the ground like a projectile, lifting the entire street and creating a hole. But Luffy didn't stop there. As he approached the ground, he immediately punched the ground where Doflamingo was, each of Luffy's punches like a meteor strike, charged with armament haki, making the city tremble. Luffy stopped punching the crater for a bit, no longer feeling Doflamingo's presence there, and saw him emerge from the ground elsewhere. He transformed his body into flames and charged at the man, preventing Doflamingo from escaping. Doflamingo emerged from the ground, bleeding and growling at Luffy amidst the city, already devastated by the battle. The few spectators now, but already scared and still fleeing, looked back only to see the silhouette of Doflamingo being subdued like an ant. Frustrated by the futility of his resistance, Doflamingo attempts his last play, the creation of thread clones in an evasive maneuver, hoping somehow to find a way to escape the island. Many copies fly towards Luffy, trying to confuse him, as Doflamingo noticed that Luffy didn't seem to master the observation haki very well, and he flies into the sky. But, as if fate conspired against him, Enel appears in a lightning bolt in front of him. Even wounded by previous battles, Enel looks at him with disdain. Beating his drums, he launches a direct attack at Doflamingo. 100 million volts. Enel announces and then releases his electrical fury on the man. The electricity envelops Doflamingo's body, making him fall back to the city ground with a crash. Boom. The explosion lights up the city once again, and a cloud of smoke once again covers half the city. Luffy approached near the explosion after dealing with Doflamingo's clones. He didn't like people meddling in his fights, but he wouldn't complain to Enel about it. Everything seemed to calm down for a moment while Doflamingo was still inside the hole created by the lightning and his body. Damn. How is he getting beaten like this? He growls, buried and frustrated. A wave of Conqueror's haki launches out of the hole with Enel's frustration, and everything around starts to turn into lines. He had awakened his fruit in this desperate moment. Doflamingo comes out of the hole still injured and launches his lines made from the city's debris towards Luffy, approaching with his heavy steps. Unfazed, Ifrit opens its mouth, like a flamethrower, it unleashes roar with a torrent of violet flames. The flames collide with Doflamingo's threads, consuming them with a surprising ease. Again and again? Doflamingo continues to growl. Nothing he did seemed to have any effect against this rookie, if he could even call him that now. Frustration was a mistake. He didn't even see it as Luffy approached with super speed, slamming him back down to the city as his body lifted parts of the city and the island shook once again with the force of the impact. Doflamingo returned to the fight once more, but in the sky, he began to summon his power, and Jaya started to create threads in all areas of the island, intending to launch one of his largest attacks, enveloping the island in a cage. Do you think I'll let you complete that? Ifrit appeared above Doflamingo. This ability of Doflamingo required some time to charge, allowing Luffy to rapidly close the distance with his speed, determined to finish the fight right then and there. With a gleam of determination in his eyes, Luffy concentrated his strength, amplifying it 60-fold as his fist was enveloped in haki. Luffy struck Doflamingo without a chance for him to dodge due to Luffy's sudden appearance and his focus on his last resort, sending him flying across the island, where the tyrant of Dressrosa destroyed an entire mountain with his cataclysmic impact. The island trembled with the impact, even the edges of the island lifted, creating a tsunami with the force that it sank into the center of the place. What's this? A giant wave. The island is lifting. What is this? How can humans have so much power? As ships tried to escape the wave and looked upon the unique sight of an island being affected by the force of such a battle, while people on the island attempted to flee and balance themselves with the change in angle, the land began to lower, normalizing its height, but now there were cracks everywhere, which would permanently change the island's geography. Luffy watched the spectacle while suspended in the air. He went towards the colossal cloud of smoke as his transformation wore off and entered it. Some time later, he emerged flying with his wings in human form, lifting Doflamingo's unconscious body, returning to the city. As he landed, still carrying Doflamingo and approaching Page One who had also fallen. The beast pirates, in a frantic attempt, tried to retrieve page 1, as they were trying to drag him back to the ship. "Hey, what do you think you're doing with my prisoner?" Luffy raised his voice to them, his presence still unnoticed by the pirates dressed as barbarians. "He is here. What do we do? Let's run. We can't face him, we must call Boss Kaido. Do you know what you're doing?" One of them gathered courage and pointed at Luffy. "Yes, I'm stealing a member of Kaido's crew. You should be more worried about Jack in the sea. I think you should rescue him, even though he's a fishman." Luffy commented. "You're attacking the beast pirates. Kaido will never let you go," said another with more courage. "Tell the old man I'll be visiting him in Wano as soon as I can." Luffy commented and started to launch flames at those men, who had to flee after Luffy's attack. As they screamed and ran, Luffy approached page 1, Enel appeared beside him with lightning striking from the sky. "You defeated him, congratulations, since you couldn't beat anyone." Luffy mocked Enel. "TSK. I just had a bit of bad luck." Enel responded arrogantly. Luffy ignored Enel and picked up page 1 with his other free hand, and began to walk through the now completely destroyed city. The few who remained watched Luffy walking alongside Enel while carrying the two bodies as if they were nothing more than bags after shopping, Kid's expression not hiding his disgust with the situation. "I don't know why you're here, but it seems like you almost died." Luffy commented with an acknowledgement. "TSK. Mugiwara." Kid growled. His goal when he deviated from his route through the Grand Line was the same, thinking that defeating him could bring great fame at sea, but seeing how he was an ant compared to the adversaries that Monkey D. Luffy fought and nearly destroyed the island to defeat them, he had to acknowledge that he wasn't at that level yet. "Release Doflamingo." A voice was heard, and Luffy turned to the other side. Bellamy, still injured and clearly shaken by recent events, demands that Luffy release Doflamingo. Bellamy's loyalty, despite the circumstances, is always unwavering. However, Luffy just mocks the demand. "You're so devoted to your master, look how strong he is." Luffy mocked, lifting the inert Doflamingo with one hand. "How dare you!" Bellamy screams, rushing forward, but Enel strikes him with lightning, electrocuting him and making him fall heavily to the ground. "I would even take you into my fleet, but you're sickly devoted to your young master." Luffy taunted and continued on his way. They continued until no one else was in sight. Taking the two bodies, he used his more fruit model, amplify human devil fruit on them and began to shrink their sizes, making them so small that Luffy put them in a sea stone cage and stored them in his pocket. "I guess we fought quite a bit in less than a day, an admiral, a holy knight, a 7 warlords of the seas, and a 4 emperors commander. I hope my resume increases after this." Luffy comments with a smile, and Enel just looks at him without saying anything. "Do you see how weak you are, Enel? Do you still think you're a god?" Luffy commented, noticing that Enel didn't respond. "These people of this sea use a strange power," he admitted, but it didn't diminish his arrogance. "You see, the people of the Blue Sea are much more powerful than you imagined. It's time for us to go train a bit. We've made quite a noise and it's better to lay low without many eyes on us, though I doubt there are no Vivre cards on our prisoners. We'll be fine until we get out of this training." Luffy commented and took off into the sky. Luffy decided to head for the Calm Belt. Since he has plans to train there with Enel, seeking to further hone their skills and prepare for future enemies. Chapter 190, World Reacto 1. Several days after the Titanic clash, the island of Jaya had been transformed from a devastated scene, not only by the city in ruins but even the geography of the island underwent changes with huge craters and mountains missing in its landscape. The battle between Luffy, Enel, Doflamingo, and the forces of the beast pirates had turned the place into ruins. Many people returned to the island after the battle to pick up and loot things. However, the event was so significant that the Navy arrived on the second day to report the situation to their superiors and heard from some witnesses, capturing some pirates with a bounty on their heads. The news of the devastation in Jaya spread like wildfire across the sea, capturing the attention of neighboring islands and all nearby maritime factions. Hearing the reports, they began to fear for their own safety. The possibility of their island or kingdom being the next place with such conflict left everyone alarmed, and the governments of these kingdoms were struggling to contain the situation. The Navy even had to be called in to provide some sense of security, as no one wanted to see the same destruction in their homes. The Navy, in turn, intensified its operations in the region, filling these waters with Navy ships patrolling, looking for any sign of the involved parties. Even fearing to deal with these forces, they still had to follow their orders and the ideology of the Navy. The pirates captured by the Navy who had been on the island told of a fire giant dominating the battlefield, lightning falling from the sky, and shockwaves so powerful that the island itself seemed to twist under its impact while trembling, a line of fire tearing through the sky and the island rising with the final impact of the fight. These reports, though they seemed exaggerated to some, were enough to leave even the most experienced sailors quite frightened by the power of the pirates who fought in Jaya. Elsewhere, out of the eyes of the Navy, since they destroyed all ships that tried to board them, the ship of the Beast Pirates was sailing with a somewhat injured Jack at the center. Hours after Luffy made them flee, they finally managed to rescue Jack from the bottom of the sea, who was thrown by Luffy's blow. Found in a semi-conscious state and severely injured, Jack was brought back to the surface and immediately taken to his ship, where he began to recover from his physical wounds and the blow to his pride. On this ship, the atmosphere was quite tense. No one said anything or tried to breathe while looking at Jack. The Calamity was in a bad mood, and the Beast Pirates knew they could die if someone irritated him. Jack was furious. He had been defeated by a rookie who said he would take him to Kaido along with Miss Yamato, but was defeated in such a humiliating way, and page 1 was taken by the same. He didn't even have the face-to-face boss Kaido with that. Jack. Don't be so moody, it wasn't your fault. The Den Mushi in front of him spoke. It wasn't my fault. I was defeated by a damn kid. Doflamingo, and page 1 are in his hands. Jack spoke in a gloomy tone. Wait. Advised King. Reinforcements are on the way for the rescue of page 1. And Kaido can't lose Doflamingo, he's too important to us after all. In fact, I'm trying to hold him back, but the boss wants to go to Paradise to sort this out anyway. King commented a bit worried. After they talked for a while, Jack returned to his crew trembling with rage. TSK, I need to find someone to take my frustration out on. Let's go to some island where I can destroy things. Jack spoke, and the crew quickly started to move with the order of the Calamity. While the ship of the Beast Pirates was crossing the waters to find some kingdom that would be its victim, a tense meeting was occurring under the Marine headquarters. Sengoku, the fleet admiral, found himself in a particularly nervous situation. Before him, an assembly of 7 warlords of the seas had been convened, a meeting that happened periodically to discuss matters of importance to the balance of power in the seas. However, this meeting was different. It was charged with an urgency and tension that was rarely seen. Doflamingo was supposed to be present at this meeting, which is why he didn't hesitate to leave Dressrosa to go to Paradise to meet Luffy. After dealing with the rookie, he planned to head to Manafort, but Luffy disappeared for weeks, and as soon as he found him a few days ago, he was defeated by the rookie. Besides the capture of Doflamingo, Sengoku was a bit angry about the empty chairs at the table, now having only 6-7 warlords of the seas with 1 vacancy open, another 2 were absent, Hancock and Jinbai, with only Gecko Maria, Bartholomew Kuma, and Mihawk seated in their places alongside the Marines. Even though I said this meeting was important, only 3 showed up. Sengoku murmured and turned back to the attendees, vice admirals, admirals, and the 7 warlords of the seas. Let's start the meeting. He began and captured everyone's attention. As you know, the rookie Monkey D. Luffy is proving to be an unprecedented threat. Sengoku started, with a tone of frustration in his voice. His ability to grow and his current strength almost toppled half of the 7 warlords of the seas. Now he has not only defeated Doflamingo but fought against Jack and threw him into the sea, capturing an important number of Kaido right after. He has the Logia user of Thunder by his side, an unknown that Luffy calls Enel, with no records of him in any fight. It's as if he emerged out of nowhere. Besides this powerful nature user who might rival or even surpass the admirals in power, he doesn't seem very strong or have mastery of Haki, but the biggest problem is the pirate Monkey D. Luffy. Despite being a rookie who entered the sea a few months ago, he has the same power as an admiral. Sengoku finished his introduction, and the room seemed a bit disturbed. A rookie with the power of an admiral? A vice admiral commented. I'm sure he wasn't that strong when I met him in Alabasta. Momonga commented, quite frustrated. Are you saying Garp's grandson is getting this strong in just 2 weeks? Another vice admiral said. How scary. Kizaru commented on the side. How strange, I was sure he didn't have that strength when I met him. Mihawk commented. You met him? Akainu looked at Mihawk, raising an eyebrow. Yes, in the East Blue, he was just a rookie, but I saw his mythical zone in action. It was a bit strange. We fought, he and his vice captain, both users of mythical zones. Their transformations were quite intriguing. I defeated them with some ease, but I could not lie that they have gigantic potential, perhaps the greatest I've seen in a rookie. They also had an interesting swordsman. Mihawk spoke calmly, not caring about the menacing look from Akainu at him at that moment. You said Yamato possesses a mythical zone too? Sengoku raised an eyebrow at that. Yes, some kind of white wolf that can launch ice. He commented. What's going on? Since when do mythical zones seem so common? A vice admiral commented, frustrated. Why am I still surprised? This group possesses 4 mythical zones. Garp, how did you raise this grandson of yours? I just want to arrest him for that. Sengoku commented, frustrated with himself. Garp was not at the meeting, saying he would take his granddaughter to train on a dangerous island a week ago. Should we increase the crew's bounty? One suggested. 1 billion after the victory over the calamity? Another said. 1 billion? Moria seemed frustrated with that. Kuma just stayed silent with an indifferent face. This is absurd for a rookie who hasn't even entered the new world. I refuse to give that reward. Let's increase to 750 million or stay at 500 million, because besides rumors, nothing was published in the newspaper. We can muffle the chaos, and Kuzan is arriving at Manaford to give more details about the pirate. Sengoku spoke and looked at everyone with a more serious tone than before. But regardless of the bounty of the pirate Monkey D. Luffy and his crew, one thing is certain, they are a threat that we must eliminate with all our forces, and for that, we need a coordinated response. Sengoku asserted. And you, as 7 warlords of the seas, will play a crucial role in this offensive. He stated with a sharp look. The meeting continued with them discussing other topics, including how to deal with Jack still in paradise and if the beast pirates would make a move, since they have the information that Luffy took a main crew member from Kaido. Shouldn't we let them kill each other? This is good for us. One of them said. Yes, but at what cost? A war devastating many islands? We are justice, we must protect the people, and we cannot let them cause chaos and terror at sea. A vice admiral spoke. TSK. Garp's grandson is turning the ocean of paradise into chaos. It will be catastrophic if the 4 Emperors decides to attack this sea. Sengoku murmured, a bit frustrated. At that moment, the meeting room door opened and a sailor entered with a newspaper. I apologize for interrupting the meeting, but something has happened. This was one of Sengoku's secretaries, and for him to enter the meeting, something big had happened. Sengoku took the newspaper and frowned at that moment at the headline. I believed that Morgan wouldn't publish anything about the event after the government threatened him. Now there's no hiding it, he is once again causing chaos in the world and becoming a threat that we must stop soon. Sengoku said, frustrated, looking at the newspaper. On the front page, there was an image of Monkey D. Luffy dragging Doflamingo and page 1 in a state of defeat and humiliation, making it clear that this figure was once again at the center of another storm, involving another 7 warlords of the seas and even the beast pirates of Kaido. The article continued not only with Luffy defeating the 2 in the photo but even Jack, one of the calamities and main forces of Kaido, fell before the rising pirate, but also that he was thrown into the sea, toasted by a devastating fire attack cutting through the sky. This act was not just a display of brute power, it was a direct declaration of war against one of the 4 emperors of the New World, Kaido, often described as the strongest creature on the planet. Luffy's audacity in challenging such a figure, known for his unparalleled strength and feared influence, on his territory, reverberated through the world like an earthquake, shaking the foundations of the established power balance. Throughout society, from the humblest villages on remote islands to the corridors of power in merry Ijos, pirates, marines, revolutionaries, and ordinary citizens, all found themselves in a mix of disbelief, admiration, and fear. Luffy's boldness in confronting the force of a 4 emperors even before entering the New World was something that shocked everyone. Fear was in every corner of the world, as this was an event that could cause a war and shake the balance of the world and the security of the kingdoms in paradise. In the effervescent editorial office of Morgans, the media mogul and president of the World Economic Journal, the atmosphere was of palpable excitement. Surrounded by vibrant posters and spectacular images of Luffy's recent fight in Jaya, secretly captured by one of his most daring employees who had infiltrated the island, Morgans could not contain his enthusiasm. Each photograph captured a moment of the epic battle, with the dominant image of Luffy dragging Doflamingo and page 1 further solidifying the dramatic narrative that was unfolding. Meanwhile, the person responsible for this headline was sitting in his office, screaming with joy and laughing with a satisfaction only the prospect of record sales that this headline would bring. Morgans, seated in his chair, contemplated the images with a shrewd gaze. Monkey D. Luffy is, without a doubt, the star of the moment. He declared. We will not miss any of the moves of this young pirate and rising rookie. He is redefining the rules of the game at sea, and we will be there to document every step, every victory, every challenge, everything will be documented and published. Morgan had already directed his attention to the young pirate in the East Blue. His audacity and strength demonstrated were a clear representation of his potential, and Morgans was becoming increasingly interested in the pirate. After the events of Logtown, he had already been tracking the crew's route, and after Alabasta, he had placed employees on all the nearby islands to start reporting on the crew's activities. He was almost losing hope of finding them in these waters when they finally emerged, destroying underworld bases on several islands, fighting an admiral and escaping, causing a gigantic explosion at sea. Although Morgan did not know what happened, it was probably an enemy faced by Luffy. Then in Jaya, things got really interesting. Morgan was surrounded by images of Luffy fighting against Jack and Doflamingo while Nathaniel fought against Page On. There were images of Luffy transformed in his final phase, striking Jack in the air. This is so fantastic, it's a shame I could only publish a few photos, I wanted to publish them all. Morgan laughed as he looked at the cover photo and then a few more photos with Luffy stopping Jack using his arms in transformation level 2, a photo of him staring down the enemy forces before the fight, and another photo of him in his colossal form, in the middle of the destroyed city, sending Jack flying with his breath of purple flames. He laughed and looked at other photos on the table, with satisfaction. You haven't seen anything yet. Morgans proclaimed to himself, and continued. Tomorrow's story is going to shake the world even more than it already is. His confidence in the news that was to come made his eyes gleam. On the table, there was a photo of Yamato, one that would be published in the newspaper the next day. Raccoon here, let me ask. Do you like chapters like this? I plan to do a few more reactions, do you want this? Chapter 191, World React 02. In the New World, a kingdom seemed gloomy with the news, or at least part of it. Ha 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 ha. Doflamingo has been defeated. Shouted a toy in the middle of the street, joyous over the defeat of the man responsible for losing everything. This. Commented a frightened citizen. Doflamingo was captured on the other side of the Grand Line? How could this happen? Screamed another. He's a 7 warlords of the seas and our king. Look who captured him, it's that evil pirate, Monkey D. Luffy. It's not the first time he's done this, can't anyone stop him in that sea? He also captured an official member of Kaido and defeated a calamity, isn't his a declaration of war? Another spoke. What's going to happen? Will Doflamingo's men act? Of course they will. They'll never let this go, but I doubt they can do much, this pirate even defeated Jack. Meanwhile, in the palace, the atmosphere was quite gloomy with all the crew members of Doflamingo's pirates, the Don Quixote pirates. This is bad. Buffalo shouted. Damn that straw hat, I should have been the one to defeat the master. Baby Fives shouted. We must act. Bika said with his high-pitched voice, making some present try not to laugh at it. But can we fight against him? Dellinger asked a bit nervously. Contact Virgo, we need more information from the Marines. Diamandi gave the order, they had Joker's Vivre card, which still indicated the direction of where he would be. On the other side of the country, 2 women sat together in a corner of the Colosseum. Is it true? Someone defeated Doflamingo? Rebecca looked with bright eyes at the photo in the newspaper. Yes. It seems Doflamingo met someone crazier than him. Violet said with a smile she hadn't shown for years, she looked at Luffy as a hero she had always sought. Also contact the Beast Pirates. He concluded. In Wano, more specifically in Onigashima, chaos was everywhere. My brother. He captured my brother. Ulti screamed, punching the walls of the place. Calm down, Ulti. Black Maria spoke, trying to calm the woman. How can I calm down? I must go to that sea and catch that Monkey D. Luffy. Page 1 needs his big sister. Ulti spoke frustrated. This pirate, he defeated Jack, what can you do? Sasaki commented on the side and Ulti could only get frustrated. From the other room, Kaido drank his sake while crying. He defeated Jack and captured Doflamingo and Page 1. He even told Jack that I was his father-in-law. Kaido exclaimed looking at the small newspaper and the headline with Luffy. He won't even invite me to the wedding. Kaido growled, seeming to have lost something precious with that, and his members surrounding him and trembling were in doubt if he took it seriously. He dares to say now my daughter belongs to him. He shouted again, crying. Lord Kaido, calm down, we'll solve this. I told Jack we would send reinforcements. King spoke, fearing Kaido would act recklessly. Yes, you're right. Kaido spoke, wiping his tears. I will send reinforcements, but those reinforcements will be me. He said, drunk, and stood up. King tried to stop him from acting, but it was too late. Kaido broke the ceiling while transforming into a blue Chinese dragon and took off to the sky while the people in the room tried not to be crushed by the stones from the broken ceiling. King. Queen looked towards where Kaido was going and disappearing into the sky. I know. He took the wrong direction. King said as he leapt into the air to follow Kaido, transforming into his ancient zone. Elsewhere, in the same sea of the New World, a meeting was happening at that moment. It was not a simple meeting. A ship with a 4 Emperorsu was approaching another ship with another 4 Emperorsu. The ship called Red Force was approaching the Moby Dick. He came personally. A crew member of the Whitebeard pirates murmured. It seems so. What are we going to do, Pops? Marco looked at the ship and then turned his attention to the great man in the middle of the boat, Whitebeard. Let that brat come to me, let's see what he wants. Whitebeard commented. It didn't take long for Shank's ship to approach the other, while the crew of Moby Dick waited and saw one of the strongest men in the world jump from that ship to theirs with a barrel of sake on his back, Everyone fell silent as the man walked to the center of the ship, but something started to happen. Pieces of the Moby Dick's crew began to faint. "Hey, what's happening?" said one, looking at his fainted companion. "He's using Conqueror's hockey. He'll be fine. For those with weak spirits, stay back if you don't want to faint too," said a commander. Shanks approached the man at the center. Whitebeard looked at him calmly. They said nothing to each other, just stared. Shanks simply tossed the sake barrel and Whitebeard caught it. Without a word, they served themselves while Shanks had his own Japanese-style cup. Whitebeard drank from the barrel. "You know." Whitebeard was the first to break the silence. "Everyone was surprised when they heard that a strong man like you returned from the East Blue without an arm. What kind of enemy did you encounter in those waters?" Whitebeard had a hint of interest. Shanks touched his severed arm. "Bet it on the new generation," he said. "You're referring to the owner of that old straw hat." Marco appeared next to Whitebeard and showed the newspaper to Shanks. "It seems he's been quite active lately. He's practically declaring war with Kaido, but to take down Jack being just a rookie, I must admit that's unprecedented." Marco spoke, showing yesterday's newspaper. "Luffy. I saw. I'm quite surprised by it too. I didn't expect the kid to become so strong. I wonder what kind of chaos he'll cause when he reaches the new world." Shanks spoke. He was quite surprised by it too, screaming what Luffy had in mind when he received the newspaper, but laughed at the child's audacity. "Yes, but have you seen today's newspaper? This is the reason why Jack got into a fight with Luffy. I'm sure Kaido won't stop now that I know his real reason for hunting a rookie in the first half of the Grand Line." Marco showed another newspaper, one that came a little before the Red Force appeared. On it was the photo of Yamato with the article. "This. What?" Shanks lost his serious demeanor and made a shocked grimace. "Luffy stole Kaido's daughter and declared the four emperors to his father-in-law." Shanks shouted, flabbergasted. "Gorrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr had a daughter all this time and now a rookie takes her and says he is his son-in-law. Newgate laughed at the rookie's audacity. This is unexpected. Luffy has always been reckless, should have figured that this would reflect on women as he grew up. Shanks commented. Anyway. Shanks drank his sake once again. I didn't came to talk about Luffy, but about his brother. Shanks returned with his serious face. What about my son? Whitebeard asked with a sharp look. Tell Ace to return. Blackbeard is more dangerous than you imagine. Something bad will happen if Ace continues with his hunt, and knowing him, he won't ask his brother for help in paradise. Shanks spoke seriously. You want to know better how I take care of my family? Whitebeard spoke in a sharp tone that even made Marco step away from the two. You know something bad is going to happen, Whitebeard. Send him back, before it's too late. Shanks insisted. Whitebeard did not respond. There would be no more conversation between them, now they would speak as pirates. Shanks sighed as he stood up and threw away his sake cup, while drawing his sword from its sheath. Whitebeard threw away his barrel and picked up his bison toe. In a movement with everyone holding their breath, the weapons clashed against each other. A wave of Conqueror's hockey went out from the impact, messing everything around while the sky was split in half. While all this was happening in the New World, the rest of the planet discussed and feared a war in the first half of the Grand Line. The news in question that came out today would shock the world again with a new piece of information. In today's edition of the World Economic Journal, the dominant headline captured the gazes and imaginations of readers around the world, with one of the most explosive and shocking stories of the year. The front page displayed a stunning photograph of Yamato and Luffy, side by side, highlighting the striking physical differences between them. Yamato, a taller woman dressed in her Wano attire, with her yellow and red horns, and Luffy, wearing his usual cloak and displaying his bandit smile. The next photo focused on Yamato's smiling face with her weapon over her shoulder. The headline proclaimed, Bombshell Revelation, Yamato, vice captain of the Straw Hats and officially declared by the captain himself as his lover, is actually the biological daughter of Kaido, known as the strongest creature in the world. Monkey D. Luffy declared in Jaya before the island's destruction that Kaido was now his father-in-law and would not invite him to the wedding. The subtitle added. In a bold move, Luffy steals the daughter of the world's strongest creature and announces wedding plans, leaving Kaido out. A third photo appeared on the front page of the newspaper, Yamato on one side and Kaido on the other. It was clear that they were really similar in many aspects. Their appearance was not so similar in coloring, but they used the same weapons, had horns, and had the same postures. This revelation was not just limited to the disclosure of Yamato being the biological daughter of one of the world's most powerful people, but how the Straw Hats seemed to want a war against a four-emperor even before arriving in the New World, that even though he had defeated Jack and nearly half of the 7 warlords of the seas, most people were skeptical that the Straw Hats could actually fight a four-emperor. The rest of the newspaper talked about Luffy and his journey with Yamato, how they already seemed to be together, leading to speculation that Yamato had run away from her father and met him in the East Blue and joined up to form the crew and have a romantic adventure. Many forces in the world were watching this with caution. Defeating and capturing a crew member was one thing, but stealing Kaido's daughter was a completely different matter that no one knew until then. The dots about why Jack had entered Paradise or why he had come into conflict with the Straw Hats were unraveling with this new information. Now they understood why the Beast Pirates had made Monkey D. Luffy a target. Meanwhile, 10,000 meters in the air, Yamato was fighting against Kuina with both transformed into their mythical zones in an ice versus ice battle while changing the landscape of that side of the upper garden. After the fight, the two took a break in the transformed glacier environment. Suddenly, Yamato sneezed strongly. "You're not cold, are you?" Kuina asked in an amused tone. "Of course not, someone must be talking about me," she commented, scratching her nose, unaware that the whole world was talking exactly about her. Chapter 192, Boa Hancock 01. As the world was shocked by the revelation of Yamato being Kaido's biological daughter, on an isolated island in the Calm Belt days later, where the waters are known to harbor fearsome sea monsters and unpredictable currents with its islands hosting powerful animals, Luffy and Enel had found a perfect refuge for uninterrupted training. The island was being bombarded by explosions. Enel lay on the ground injured while a gorilla seemed to be celebrating victory over the former god of Skypiea. "Damn! How can I beat this creature without my powers? Get this off me!" Enel demanded from a Luffy beside him. "Stop complaining, I'm using the same handcuffs as you to fight the creatures without my powers and I'm still winning. You rely too much on your abilities, which is a big mistake. You need to learn hockey, given your poor performance. Do you still think you can become a god this way?" Luffy commented with disdain in his tone. He had put on handcuffs to restrict all devil fruit powers so they could only use hockey against the island's creatures. While Enel was getting beaten up by the gorilla, in front of Luffy lay an elephant, a snake, and a lion on the ground after he defeated them. Luffy did not win easily. After all, these animals were not simple, but in the end, he won with some injuries. "Why can't I beat them?" Enel complained. He could be a great user of observation hockey, but with armament hockey, he was quite bad. "Watch how it's done," Luffy said, and using instant transmission, he appeared in front of the gorilla and with his fist wrapped in hockey, he punched the animal, sending it flying backwards with the impact and falling unconscious. "I think I'll have to look for an island with stronger animals," Luffy commented, looking at the fallen animal, and turned his attention to a frustrated Enel. "Enel, I'll leave you here for a while. I think it's better for you to train and learn from this book," Luffy commented. The real reason for taking Enel from Skypiea was the tension he could bring. Since he killed so many people from that place, the inhabitants would not like him training with them, and Luffy wanted to greatly strengthen that kingdom for the future war, so putting Enel on this island to learn about hockey and the 6 styles while training would be a good option while he continues his journey until he returns to the crew. "You can't be serious," Enel commented a bit cautiously. "Yes, I'm serious. Don't you want to become a god? Or are you afraid of a little island? If you can't survive here without using your powers and become stronger, you would never be worthy of achieving your goals." Luffy spoke, and Enel just snorted but found his own determination. "Fine then, I'll read this book and get stronger as you say." He spoke, and Luffy threw the book to him. Luffy handed over some basic survival items to Enel, but the big-eared man was to be responsible for his own survival here. After that, Luffy removed his own handcuffs but left Enel with his. His training was to not rely so much on his fruit and to strengthen his body with new techniques. "With that, I'll say goodbye. I'll return as soon as I can. I hope you won't disappoint me, Enel," Luffy commented, creating his wings to fly even faster. "TSK. When you see me again, I'll be more powerful than you, demon." Enel spoke with his usual arrogance, but Luffy did not believe his words. Luffy did not respond and leaped from the ground into the air, quickly beginning to ascend above the island. "Where should I go? I must train on an island stronger than this one before seeking my target," Luffy murmured. He was in the middle of the Calm Belt, so he could choose any direction. He then picked one and began to fly towards it, not worried about Enel and his location since he had his Vivre card. Luffy traveled for hours using his increased speed until he found another island and headed in that direction. But in the sea between Luffy and the air and the island, a certain boat was navigating those waters at that time, with 2 giant snakes carrying the ship and the Kuja Pirates symbol on its flag. On that boat, sailing smoothly even through the treacherous waters of the Calm Belt, at the bow of the ship, a woman with long legs walked along the wooden deck while the women around stopped what they were doing to watch her approach. "Hancock-sama!" most shouted. "Sister?" Boa Sandersonia looked surprised at her older sister next to Boa Marigold. "Is something wrong, sister, for you to come out of your room?" Marigold asked curiously. Someone is approaching. She commented with her arrogant tone and looked up at the sky, where Luffy was flying at high speed. He noticed the ship below him for the first time and with his vision saw the identity of the flag. Kuja pirates? I didn't expect to encounter Hancock so soon. He commented. But anyway, since we're here, let's say hello. With that, his wings flapped, and he headed in that direction. Boa Hancock looked at the man approaching, while her sisters quickly prepared as soon as they felt his presence. The pirates not proficient in hockey were doubtful and confused about the behavior of the three sisters. Prepare yourselves, an enemy is approaching, shouted a woman with dark hair, with slightly better hockey. Luffy appeared 50 meters above the ship blocking the sun with his black wings, looking at the Kuja pirates' ship with interest. So you're Boa Hancock, one of the 7 warlords of the seas. Luffy commented in a playful tone. At that moment, however, a pink heart-shaped beam headed towards him. With a flash, he flapped his wings and dodged the beam at the last moment. Is this how you greet someone, Hancock? Luffy commented in the same playful tone, watching the beam fly into the sky. Boa Hancock just stared at him, putting her hands in a heart shape to petrify him. He is the pirate monkey D. Luffy, with a bounty of 750 million. Sandersonia commented, picking up some papers with a newspaper. 750 million? It went up even more? Let me see that. Luffy commented with shining eyes while looking at the papers in the woman's hands. He quickly started flying towards the ship. Boa Hancock began to launch her attack seeing this. Mero. The pink beams flew towards Luffy. He didn't know what could happen, so the best option was to dodge them. After all, he couldn't deny his attraction to Hancock despite finding Yamato even prettier. Luffy continued dodging the beams. TSK. Hancock frowned as she couldn't hit him, and before anyone could react, Luffy appeared in front of her sister. Hello. Luffy greeted Sandersonia before she could react, but in that time, Hancock ran across the deck and jumped to kick Luffy. Luffy was a bit surprised by the long legs coming towards him. He quickly dodged the attack by ducking. No panties. At least you take care of its appearance. Luffy commented, looking under Hancock's leg and inside her dress. You damned man. Hancock seemed enraged at that moment, as a man dares to speak so easily of her private parts. Luffy dodged another kick and just smiled. Don't get angry, you really are one of the most beautiful women in the world, but there are others like you, so don't act like you're the center of the world. Luffy might have been smiling, but he said it with disdain. He personally did not like Hancock's arrogant personality. What did you say? Hancock seemed even more irritated, throwing many kicks in Luffy's direction, but he started to dodge them and moved past Hancock. All this happened in a matter of milliseconds, while the other women could barely react to all of it. Luffy returned to Sandersonia and grabbed the newspaper in her hand before dodging Nuri's with the power of the pirate Medusa. This beam even hit other crew members, petrifying them, but Hancock was more concerned about hitting Luffy and venting the anger that this damned man had instilled in her. Luffy moved away from the ship again, looking with a small smile at the beams passing by him. While Hancock looked at him with so much anger that no one had gained so much anger since she fled from the Tenri Obito. Sister. Be careful, he has already taken down 7 warlords of the seas. Marigold commented with concern while looking up where Luffy was passing with his wings open. This man, he's now coming after our sister? Sandersonia said with some anger. Prepare yourselves, we'll take down this man and protect our queen, Hancock-sama. The Kuja pirates who were not petrified, went into combat mode, ready to face Luffy, using bows and arrows. This damned man. How dare he, how does he treat me this way? I am the most beautiful woman in the world. She was angry and thought about approaching the man differently. She replaced the ugly face of hatred with something more seductive. Beautiful man, couldn't you come here to speak with this beautiful woman? She said, striking a unique pose. Sister. He's not looking at you. Sandersonia commented with hesitation. Hancock had her eyes closed while tossing her head back in her pose. When she opened her eyes, she saw the man looking at the newspaper with interest, completely ignoring her. How dare he again? She said frustrated. Meanwhile, Luffy was looking at the newspaper and 2 new wanted posters. This is interesting, there's yesterday's news about my fight. This picture turned out great. Luffy said, laughing looking at the photo where he was dragging Doflamingo and Page 1 in a state of defeat in the middle of the Destroy Jaya by their fight. But this last news is also surprising. I never thought they would publish something like this when I talked to Jack. Luffy commented, looking at the news of Yamato being Kaido's daughter and how the family was having internal problems, as the news reported that Yamato was fleeing from her father to marry the man she loved. Ha 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 ha. I bet Morgans did this on purpose. But my new bounty is really cool. Luffy laughed, looking at his poster, with the same photo from the newspaper. him triumphing against powerful pirates as he walked victoriously. There were his poster, Enel's, and even Yamato's. Monkey D. Luffy, 750 million Baileys, dead or alive. Enel, 200 million Baileys, dead or alive. Yamato, 400 million Baileys, dead or alive. Chapter 193, Boa Hancock 02. As Luffy flipped through the newspaper, completely absorbed in his own bounty and the news, utterly oblivious to the chaos he had instigated on the Kuja pirate's ship, Boa Hancock experienced a level of fury she seldom felt towards a man. In all past instances, she could simply turn them to stone, but this pirate was faster than she was, which already infuriated her, and to see herself being ignored. A vein appeared on her forehead. The Pirate Queen, known for her beauty, considered to be the most beautiful woman in the world, was not accustomed to being ignored, much less scorned. How dare he ignore my presence, my beauty? Hancock murmured to herself, her eyes fixed on Luffy with a burning intensity. The other pirates, noticing their queen's indignation, quickly rallied to her defense, hurling a barrage of insults towards the carefree pirate. "Despicable!" shouted one of the younger pirates, a hockey arrow ready on her bow. "Insolent!" echoed another, as she prepared her own attack, determined to protect their leader's honor. Hancock, trying to maintain an appearance of calm and control, raised a hand, signaling her subordinates to calm down. "Leave him to me," she said, her voice a mix of calm and coldness. "This man, this Monkey D. Luffy will learn to respect the most beautiful woman in the world." "Sister." One of her sisters looked towards Hancock cautiously. After all, she knew Luffy was not a common enemy they would encounter in paradise. Without saying anything more, Hancock advanced towards Luffy, determined to subjugate him. She began to leap into the air, using the moonwalk technique she had learned on her own. I believe she cannot use moonwalk, but I think it's a technique that can be added to her here. Meanwhile, Luffy was oblivious to a scorned woman approaching him as there was a flurry of complaints on the ship below. Luffy remained focused on the newspapers in his hands. He laughed loudly, his joy at seeing new bounties as his laughter spread through the sky. 750 million, huh? That's amazing. But why didn't it reach 1 billion? He asked curiously, his expression becoming a bit disappointed. I defeated a billion bounty pirate, that's not fair. His joy turned into complaint. What's that? He diverted his attention from the newspaper, feeling a danger approaching with his developing observation hockey. He looked down and noticed Hancock approaching with hatred in her gaze. Why is she so angry? Luffy murmured and received a kick, dodging it, forced to drop the newspaper. Hey, don't disturb others in their reading. Luffy commented. You damned man. This queen will teach you a lesson and break you when you turn to stone. She said, starting a combo of kicks at Luffy. Hancock, you should wear panties, I can see everything from here. Luffy commented, dodging the attacks again. And I only like women who I have exclusivities with, it bothers me if someone else can see something that only I should. Luffy commented calmly. What are you implying with that? I will kill you. She snarled. Your arrogant personality is also a turn-off. He said, making her intensify her strikes even more. Luffy was the most hated man for Hancock at that moment. You're really sensitive, aren't you? Luffy complains with a kick passing just milliseconds from his head. This is getting dangerous, I'll have to fight back too. He comments internally, as his arms wrap in hockey, and began to hit Hancock's feet with his attacks, forming a fight of punches and kicks. With hockey, at least he wasn't turning into stone. Luffy, on the other hand, used his agility and hockey ability to dodge and counterattack, his punches targeting Hancock with precision. The duel between the two was not just physical, but also a confrontation of wills, where Hancock's fury collided with Luffy's uncommitted joy. Luffy and Hancock began to exchange blows, causing a disturbance in the air with the sonic explosions of both forces. Luffy could not beat her in his usual form just with wings, but at least he could defend himself for the moment. Boom. 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 As the two continued to fight, the confrontation became increasingly intense, both moving like shadows, their limbs in motion as if they were dancing in front of each other. The Kuja pirates were in shock, while Hancock's sisters were deeply concerned about how the fight was progressing, as the man seemed undeterred by the woman known as the most beautiful in the world. At one moment, Hancock decided to add a different twist to the fight using her fruit, fighting only with her legs against Luffy. She moved her arms and formed a heart with her hands in front of Luffy. Seeing this, Luffy was quite surprised, knowing he could fall right there to this point-blank beam, as Hancock wouldn't let him escape easily. Love fruit model, love human devil fruit. Hancock, smiling triumphantly, noticed a change in Luffy. A burst of purple flames occurred, and she was thrown backward as she launched her beam. The sound of flames covered the sky, and Hancock's beam went straight to the center. Hancock frowned, looking at a spot inside the flames where her attack hadn't reached. Luffy had managed to escape her point-blank shot. When the flames dissipated, a Phase 2 Luffy was shown to all, his body having changed. "So this is your mythical zone," Hancock commented, not foolish enough to be unaware of Luffy's powers. This pirate was taking down all the 7 warlords of the seas, and she had to be cautious with him too after the news of Doflamingo and Jack's fall. "That was close," Luffy commented while in his transformation. He looked at Hancock and cracked a small smile. In an instant, he advanced directly towards the pirate empress, wanting to test her strength. Luffy dodged the love fruit model, love human devil fruit beams as he approached. Hancock had no choice but to face him head-on. Boom. 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 Once again, the fight between arms and legs began anew, but Hancock found some difficulty in combating her enemy now, though it wasn't so visible to the eyes of others. The Kuja pirates, still shocked on the ship below, raised their thoughts seeking answers. "Can a man transform into this purple thing?" one of the younger ones asked, looking bewildered. "How can he move so fast?" exclaimed one of the older ones, her eyes wide in surprise as she followed the nearly invisible movements of Luffy and her empress. "Can he really fight on par with our queen?" Another fangirl couldn't help but exclaim. For her, Hancock was invincible, and no one could say otherwise. Some of the younger pirates began to scream in support of their queen. "Finish him, finish that man, Hancock-sama. Show him the power of the Kuja pirates." Meanwhile, the more experienced exchanged worried glances with Hancock's sisters, aware that the fight was not so simple. With every move of Hancock, trying to corner Luffy with her love rays, the crew reacted with palpable tension. And when Luffy used his increased speed to dodge, a murmur of astonishment swept across the deck of the ship. Luffy's flames began to affect the women on the ship, forcing them to start moving away from the hot flames intensifying in the sky. "I think your crew will be in a bad state if we continue our fight here," Luffy commented while punching Hancock's feathers, launching an explosion with the radius of armament hockey around them with a shock explosion. Hancock didn't say anything, just continued trying to get through the man's defense while he attempted to hit her so she would turn to stone. Luffy backed away a bit and looked towards the island he had already planned to go to anyway, before flapping his wings and flying in that direction. "Do you intend to flee from this empress?" Hancock practically shouted, watching Luffy move away. She would not let this happen. Still boiling with rage for having been challenged and, in her perception, disrespected by this man, she was not willing to let Luffy escape so easily. Though she recognized he was strong, perhaps stronger than her, and in speed, he had already surpassed her, she was confident she could defeat him by turning him into stone. Then, using moonwalk, she started to follow him in the air towards the island. "She's following me. That's good." Luffy looked back to see Hancock stepping through the air trying to approach him. He wanted to talk to her alone, and now he would have a chance. While on the Kuja pirates' ship, everyone watched dumbfounded as the two moved away. Luffy flew over the island and found a deserted beach on the other side with ample space to fight without affecting the beasts within the forests, and this would give time until the Kuja pirates could circumnavigate the island to reach them. Luffy landed softly on the white sand, turning to wait for Hancock, who soon landed elegantly near him, her expression still laden with fury but also with a hint of curiosity about Luffy's intentions, knowing the pirate had lured her here on purpose. "Damned man, why did you bring me here?" Hancock demanded, maintaining her arrogant composure. Luffy, with his characteristic ease, replied, "I think we were going too far back on the ship. Maybe here we can talk better, without everyone watching. I don't want to hurt you or your ship. Or your crew. Do you think you can do that?" she said angrily and charged at him. Luffy dodged her kick. He punched her in an opening making her retreat several meters. When she was about to return to the fight and attack again, she realized Luffy was above her, as flames swirled like a tornado around his right arm as he clenched his fist to attack her. Hancock had to go on the defensive seeing that she could not dodge him. The flames exploded before that beach, lifting sand all over the place. Boom. The explosion of purple flames exploded all over the place as Luffy cancelled his transformation and maintained his human appearance. When the flames and dust settled, a Hancock appeared in the middle of a crater. She was fine while keeping her arms crossed in a defensive position. However, the same could not be said about her clothes, because she was completely naked. "I'm sure she's going to try to kill me without even listening after this, but I must say, she really is one of the most beautiful women in the world." Luffy comments looking at Hancock. He was right. Hancock had never experienced such humiliation since she left her life as a slave. She had been ignored, mocked, and now humiliated by this man. She wanted to kill him once and for all because now he could see the mark on her back, so now she would kill him mercilessly as she looked at him with eyes filled with hatred. Chapter 194, Boa Hancock 03. "You. I'm going to kill you." Hancock was so enraged that her haki began to emanate from her body. Seeing this, Luffy expanded his haki as well, and the energy was released against Hancock's energy that spread throughout the beach. The two hakis met, causing them to collide with each other, creating a wall of energy while yellow lightning appeared in the air. The haki of both expanded, sweeping the island and even turning the day dark as they clashed against each other. He's a user of Conqueror's haki too. But it's not a surprise given his background. Hancock commented as she watched her haki clash with Luffy's to see which would subdue the other. She might be angry at this man to the point of wanting him dead, but that didn't stop her from looking cautiously at him. This Luffy was dangerous, and with his clothes burned, he would see the mark on her back, needing to eliminate him before he leaves the island. Luffy watched the hakis clash while everything was affected by them. The sea began to recede from the shock as the island's trees leaned back with the beach's sand dust blowing towards the sea and forest. He didn't have his observation haki strong enough to see the forest, but he could tell that various animals were falling unconscious at that moment. My haki has improved a lot in the last few months, but I'm surprised it's reached Hancock's level, though I've never seen her using this power in the original work. Luffy comments softly as one haki tries to dominate the other in the wall, yet both are in a stalemate. We don't need to continue this, Hancock. Neither of our hakis will win over the other, but even if one does, nothing will change. Luffy declares out loud, since even if one of them wins the haki at this moment, neither will be affected by the other. Shut up. Luffy heard the naked woman growling at him regardless of her current state and looked fiercely. I'm not your enemy. I did this for a purpose, can you hear me? Luffy comments. I said. To shut up. Hancock screams and with super speed, she advances towards Luffy while her body was still naked. Luffy sighs as he sees the woman coming towards him, but he can't help but be amazed by her bouncing breasts. It's a good view. More fruit model, amplify human devil fruit, speed, apply 60 times. He said, canceling his Conqueror's haki. He moves his body, and Hancock's kick passes by him a moment later. He could even see the mark of the tattoo on her back at that moment. Hancock could no longer hide it and just wanted to kill him quickly so she could keep her secret. Luffy didn't comment as another kick passed by him. Hancock just growled, launching another kick, and Luffy moving his head to avoid it. He was dodging at high speed, while Hancock tried to hit him at any cost. Stand still so I can kill you. She growled, and Luffy just laughed at the irrational suggestion. Are you furious because I saw the slave mark on your back? Luffy commented while seeming like a flash dodging the blows. He felt Hancock hesitating a bit, her body trembled with negative emotions at that moment. I can help you remove it, if you want. Luffy commented once more, making the woman lose her composure and land on the ground while looking at him intensely. What do you mean by that? She asked with hatred, but there was also a mix of fear and curiosity in her tone. Luffy looked at her calmly, shifting his gaze from her body to her blue eyes. I can remove that mark. I have a crew member with healing abilities, we can remove the skin and use his power to regenerate new skin. Luffy commented. He had good doctors in his crew, Chopper and Lamy, but now he had a member who could do something none of them could, or at least not as quickly. Which is to regenerate. Are you serious? She shouted in conflict. Yes, I know you don't trust me, and think I will expose this information to someone outside this place, but the Tenri Obito are also my enemies. Luffy commented, making Hancock stare at him intensely. Do you know what you're talking about? Who are you to say they are your enemies? She practically scoffed at the man's words. I've killed 2 of them since I started my journey. I'm sure if it wasn't for hiding this information from the worlds, they would send all the admirals and government forces after me, although they are already doing that, not as urgently as I expected. Luffy commented, reflecting on the last part. He was certain that the 5 elders had already discovered that he eliminated 2 Tenri Obito. You can't be serious. Hancock spoke with a bit of conflict, not knowing if she could believe such absurdity. Whether you want to believe it or not, it doesn't matter now. Luffy scoffed. But don't you want to take revenge on them, on the Tenri Obito, the world government? I can also give you a chance for that. Luffy spoke, looking her in the eyes. What do you mean by that now? She looked at him once more. She didn't know why, but the man's words intrigued her more and more with each moment they spoke. What I want, Hancock. Luffy raised his hand towards her, pointing his finger at the naked woman. I want allies for the war in the future, where I plan to overthrow the world government and give autonomy back to all the countries of the world, but also at the end of my adventure, I will be known as the Emperor of all the seas of this world. Luffy declared with a confident tone, leaving Hancock a bit disconcerted, even forgetting her hatred for the man. You want to overthrow the world government? She shouted in surprise. Yes, as I said, I will become the Emperor of the seas, and me and the government will never coexist when that happens, one must destroy the other. So believe me when I say that such a thing will happen. Luffy commented, leaving the woman speechless. There are still people like that. Hancock murmured softly, remembering Fisher Tiger, the fishman who decided to stand up against the celestial dragons and freed many slaves while burning the Holy Land. She always thought no one would dare to speak such words against the gods of this world, but this man spoke it openly, although it was just the two of them. It was unbelievable words for Hancock's ears. Anyway, think about what I said. You might think I will talk about your slave mark when I leave here, but we have a common enemy. I can remove the mark on your back, and we can be future allies in the future when I start a war that will involve the whole world. For now, I came to train on this island, so take this. Luffy simply spoke. He had already done and said everything he wanted with Hancock, but he didn't hope that she would just accept his words, hoping that this would happen after the war, if it happens. He opened the system in front of him, while Hancock, still dazed, tried to understand the words of the man who didn't seem shaken while speaking such things. He didn't even seem to care if he was in front of the most beautiful woman in the world. His power seemed to really affect him, but he knew how to control his emotions as he ignored her to click with his finger in the middle of the air without Hancock being able to understand what he was doing. Suddenly, a set of clothes appeared in front of him. He picked it up a bit surprised to find something like Hancock's clothes in the store. He took it and looked at the woman standing a few meters away, before throwing the clothes on her. Take this, your crew must be arriving soon, let's say goodbye, as I wanted to came to this island even before meeting you. I'm on a training journey, think about what I said, and we'll meet in the future. Luffy commented and started walking towards the forest, thinking he should first make a camp while the animals were likely still passed out in the forests. Meanwhile, Hancock, who had let the clothes fall over her shoulder, didn't take her eyes off where Luffy had been until recently, still thinking about everything the man had spoken to her. Can he remove my curse? Did he say he killed Tutenri Obito? Did he really do something like that? He plans to become the Sea Emperor and face the world government? Was he not just lying? He's planning a world war? He wants this Empress as his ally. Where is he? Hancock snapped out of her thoughts and looked to the side, as Luffy had started walking towards the forest without caring about her any longer. He didn't even care about the beauty of this Empress? She murmured in the end. Luffy walked through the forest looking for a suitable place to set up a camp for the coming weeks. He felt a presence by his side, at least there was no longer the hostility from before, and he didn't need to worry about someone attacking him now, but that didn't make the woman any less arrogant. Wait, you damn man. I need to talk to you before I decide whether to kill you or not, since you've seen all the secrets of this Empress. She said by his side. Do you at least want to talk? I'm willing, but don't interrupt my training. Luffy shrugged and continued walking ahead, making his way through the brush. He could burn the place down, but he took his sword still strapped to his waist and began cutting vines. Ha ha ha. What would Gul D. Roger say if he saw me using his famous sword to cut grass and make a path through the brush? Luffy thought, laughing inwardly. You can't treat this Empress this way, damn man. She continued with a tone of hostility, but at least she wasn't trying to kick Luffy anymore, even though he was just inches away from the naked woman. Hey, at least put on the clothes I gave you. If you stay like that, I'll think you're trying to seduce me. Luffy commented, looking into her eyes and then at her body. Not that I'd find that bad. He said with a grin like a rogue, looking at Hancock, who blushed and realized she was still naked. How can he act so calmly and even be bold? Hancock commented while stopping to put on the dresses, which she found so similar to her own, wondering how Luffy managed to get something like that. Soon after, she was following the man, asking so many questions and becoming frustrated because he still ignored her and treated her like anyone else while finding a place in the middle of that island. Chapter 195, Boa Hancock 04. The Kuja pirates' ship began to land on the beach where the fight was happening. Where is Hancock-sama? An Amazon asked worriedly. The beach was heavily devastated from the fight between Hancock and Luffy, and as they were coming to this side of the island, they felt the clash of conquerors' haki. You all stay here, that man is not an ordinary pirate, he even faced off against the older sister's haki. Sandersonia and I will check the situation. Marigold said, and the two immediately jumped from the boat onto the beach. Be careful. The women shouted from the ship. They're in the forest. Sandersonia commented. Strange. No more fighting? Marigold whispered. Something must have happened, let's hurry. Sandersonia said with a tone of concern. The sisters entered the island and it didn't take long for them to feel the presence of the two further ahead in a kind of spacious clearing. This. Marigold wondered if she was correctly sensing their presence with her haki. Let's check and see if it's really them. Sandersonia spoke, frowning. They finally arrived at a place where there was a kind of camp that Luffy had set up, with a tent, a bonfire, and a pot on the fire. The sisters had already found this strange, because the man had done something like this not long after being in a fight with Hancock in a battle where their older sister tried to kill him. However, as soon as they saw the next scene, they opened their mouths and their eyes widened. The man, Monkey D. Luffy, was sitting with a bowl of soup in hand while Hancock, dressed in different clothes, was sitting close to him with another bowl in her hand, but she seemed not to be eating. She appeared to be yelling at the man with a tone of anger. "Tell me. You didn't say anything before. Answer before this empress turns you into stone, damn man." Hancock had veins on her forehead and struggled not to kick Luffy at that moment while the pirate in front of her refused to keep explaining himself all the time. "Stop talking. Just eat your food, I had to pay a lot for the ingredients." Luffy shrugged while putting a spoon of his soup into his mouth. "You damn!" Hancock shouted, and she moved her leg without leaving the spot and Luffy simply moved his head to avoid the blow. "Stop being annoying. How are you going to get married with that kind of personality?" Luffy commented, putting a second spoon in his mouth. Sandersonia and Marigold looked at their enraged sister at that moment, while she had veins on her forehead, white eyes, and her hand trembled with the carefree words of this man. "Sandersonia, what are we seeing, sister?" one asked without taking her eyes off the scene. "I also want to know, sister." The other replied, "Lost. I think this needs more pepper." Luffy commented and looked back at the two sisters. "Do you want some too? Your sister here is wasting my food and breaking several utensils. I hope you behave better." Luffy commented, and Hancock next to him broke her pot with her soup. The two Snake sisters didn't know what to say. They had never seen their older sister treated in that way. The man seemed clearly afraid of her ability, but he didn't behave like a man in love and even mocked Hancock. A moment later, the two sisters found themselves joining them as they sat on some wooden benches while Luffy served his dish. Hancock was beside him with her arms crossed and eyes closed, clearly in a bad mood. They still didn't know how to react to this, conflicted on whether they should eat the soup prepared by the man or ask for guidance from their sister, sitting at a distance unwilling to talk to anyone. "Sister Sama. What's happening?" Marigold broke the ice. Hancock took a while to respond and opened her eyes still in a bad mood. "He saw my mark." She commented with a calmness that Hancock only spoke with when she was serious. This made the other two sisters turn pale. It didn't take long for them to stand up and get into a combat stance against Luffy. "What? We must eliminate him," they shouted. Luffy looked at them with annoyance as he saw the containers he had given the sisters broken on the floor. "You wasted the soup. Does none of you have any manners with food?" Luffy commented with a certain anger. The sisters paused for a moment, and their eyes went to Hancock, who had closed her eyes again. "Sister? Shouldn't we kill this man?" Marigold asked, lost, as her sisters seemed not to care that the man had seen the slave mark. "I tried, but I couldn't. This damn man said he could remove the mark." She replied. "What? He can do that?" They turned back to Luffy trying to ignore the sisters because he wanted to beat all three of them at that moment. "Can you really do that?" Sandersonia now asked with a tone of hope. "Quiet. Can you let me eat in peace? I want to recover my energy when the animals of this island wake up so I can start my training." Luffy shouted at them and ducked before a long leg passed over him. The leg hit the pot of his soup, causing it to fall to the ground and spill all the food. Luffy looked at this before a vein appeared on his forehead. He looked at Hancock, who just crossed her arms and pointed her nose up as if she was doing him a favor. "You damn woman, I'm going to beat you for this." Now Luffy had become irritated. "Come at me, you damn man, who do you think you are to talk to my sisters like that, and the soup wasn't even that good?" Hancock spoke arrogantly and then lifted her leg and kicked Luffy's fist that had gone in her direction, with the pirate's irritation exceeding the limits. Boom. Boom. They started exchanging blows with armament hockey against each other, while the whole terrain exploded with the confrontation. Sandersonia and Marigold looked dazed at this kind of situation, not knowing what to say as the dust rose and trees broke. "You damn woman, what kind of personality is this? You're going to stay single for the rest of your life. Your fruit should be called the fruit of arrogance instead of the fruit of love." Luffy shouted. "This empress has decided, you're going to die, you wretched man. You are the worst man I've ever met, and that's saying something since all men are despicable. Come then, I didn't want to do this, but you've irritated me. I'm going to beat you until you become a sweet woman." Luffy shouted. "I'm going to turn you into stone and break every piece of your body." Hancock replied angrily. "Bring it on. I'm going to kill you." Boom. 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 20 minutes later, the fight finally calmed down. Hancock sat beside her sisters while Luffy was making another soup, glancing occasionally at Hancock with a look of anger, while Hancock seemed to be mocking Luffy. "This damn man, he's suffering. This empress is unstoppable." Hancock whispered proudly while staring at Luffy, and her sisters seemed lost watching this scene while looking at each other. "What should we do?" "I don't know, But if that man is telling the truth, wouldn't it change our lives? We should ask the older sister. Sister Sama. Wait, I want to see him suffer more. It's so good to take revenge on this man after so many humiliations this empress has suffered. Hancock silenced her sisters while still looking at Luffy with a satisfied smile, since this man had ignored, scorned, and humiliated her. Now she had a taste of revenge since she couldn't turn him into stone. In the end, the younger sisters just looked at each other and sighed. Luffy made another dish, as he had not recovered his strength and was hungry. I miss Rages so much. He couldn't help but murmur, thinking about the food and the curves he barely got to enjoy, since he had been with her for just one day. As Luffy could not buy ready-made food from the system, he had to prepare with what he could, still resentful of Hancock for knocking over the pot of soup. When he finally finished without Hancock bothering him again, he returned to the sisters. As you know, I said I would remove the mark from your sister's back. I can do it, but not now while a member of my crew is not with me. I would do it another time, but you can trust me, I want to make an alliance with the Kuja pirates. Luffy declared. He wanted to be alone now, as he would start his personal training. Sister. Shall we trust him? Do you really think he can do it? Marigold asked. I don't know. Hancock admitted. But he at least seems confident in his words, but I don't even know if we can deal with him even if we could. He also did not belittle me for my mark and instead wants an alliance to one day fight against the government and the Tenri Obito. Hancock admitted, leaving her younger sisters stunned. Are we going to leave him here like this, sister? Sandersonia asked worriedly, seeing that he knew of the slave mark. We have no choice but to let him go for now. Hancock spoke with disgust, standing up. Let's return to the ship, I'm a bit tired. She commented, preparing to leave. Seeing this, Luffy nodded, hoping to meet her in the future to honor his words. Well, you can think as much as you want, but don't worry, I'll keep my words the next time we meet. You can go now, as I'm going to start my training on this island for a while, so see you around. Luffy commented as he tossed his cape aside to stretch while displaying his athletic chest with his movements. His words stopped Hancock, who was on her way out. She slowly turned towards the man stretching. You're sending us away? Hancock turned her attention to Luffy at that moment. Luffy stopped his stretching and looked at her. Weren't you going to leave anyway? He said, confused. I was going to leave, but I don't need the man to tell me that. She spoke with disdain and started walking towards Luffy, who was still confused. Sister. One of her sisters asked Hancock, turning back to the man. I've decided, I'll stay a bit longer. Hancock spoke. Hey, why? I'm training here, weren't you going to leave? Luffy raised an eyebrow at the woman. I was going to, but not because a man asked me to. You think you can order this empress around? Hancock put her finger on Luffy's nose and spoke arrogantly. She might even try to petrify him, but Luffy could be someone who would free her from the curse, so she'd risk trusting this pirate for the time being. I'm not ordering, just saying goodbye. Luffy commented. He hadn't said anything wrong. You did order. Hancock retorted. You and your damn ego. Fine, do whatever you want. Luffy said with disdain. Are you ordering this empress to stay, by any chance? She countered, pinching Luffy's nose with her hands. Are you an idiot or something? Luffy retorted angrily, not liking that. Who are you calling an idiot? Turn to stone. Hancock shouted angrily. Shut up, you damn narcissist. You can be worse than me. Luffy retorted. Boom. Boom. Sandersonia and Marigold once again looked lost at that, while Luffy and Hancock exchanged blows again while destroying that part of the forest. Chapter 196, Boa Hancock 05. This empress has made up her mind. She will stay here because she wants to, and no man will command her. Hancock declared as she walked through the forest. You could stop being so annoying. Luffy commented, dissatisfied by her side, beginning to regret his decision to come to the Kuja pirates' ship at this moment, unaware that he would have this thorn in his side while he trained hockey on this island. Who are you calling annoying, damned man? Hancock exclaimed as she kicked a stone, shattering it with her anger. Luffy attempted to ignore the woman as he continued walking through the forest. Hancock's sisters were lost a few meters from the two, wanting to return to the ship with their older sister, but she seemed to be behaving strangely, having never seen her interact with a man, though this one didn't seem to enjoy her company. You can go back, I will stay a bit longer and train with this man as well. Because this empress is interested in the training. She spoke arrogantly, striking a pose. Marigold looked at her sister. What should we do? I don't know. But if we leave our older sister, will she be okay with this pirate? Speaking of the pirate. The sisters spoke and looked towards Hancock's side where Luffy was supposed to be, but as Hancock struck her odd pose, Luffy ignored her and continued walking into the forest. Hancock also noticed his absence. This damned man, He's ignoring this beauty? Hancock growled and started walking with heavy steps and a strange gait towards where Luffy had disappeared into the forest. Luffy had encountered a giant lion. He paused for a moment as he observed the animal without hiding his presence. The lion noticed him and growled at Luffy. "How should I start my training?" he murmured, looking at the beast, not wanting to use his fruit, and was about to put on his sea stone handcuff at that moment, but a narcissistic woman emerged from the forest behind him and flew at the lion, kicking the creature and turning it into stone. Luffy looked at the stone-transformed lion and then at the woman who landed in an odd pose, waiting for him to praise her, while she held her handcuff in hand. "You took too long to deal with a small beast, were you scared? Don't worry, this Empress will help you." Hancock taunted as if he needed any help dealing with the animals around him. Luffy, with a vein on his forehead, thought it would be a good idea to teach this woman a lesson. He approached her as he saw another group of lions emerging from the forest, growling at them. "Of course, how could I deny the world's most beautiful woman?" Luffy spread his arms and pretended to approach Hancock. "It seems you've finally recognized the beauty of this woman." Hancock seemed to have won a sort of premium seeing Luffy's reaction and pointed at herself with pride. Hancock felt something on her wrist and opened her eyes to find herself handcuffed with sea stone. Luffy appeared in front of her with a mischievous smile. "Well, if you want to participate in this training, you can't use hockey. Don't worry, I'll remove the handcuff as soon as you want to leave. Until then, good luck," Luffy said, still keeping his mischievous smile. "What have you done, you damned man?" she shouted and tried to kick Luffy, but even without hockey, he defended himself, now that she couldn't use her power to turn him into stone. "Ha ha ha. Come on Hancock, you have to deal with the lions without using your fruit power. I'll train you since you're so weak at the moment." Luffy mocked the arrogant woman at that moment. "You!" Hancock began to growl and started kicking Luffy, but he used his more fruit model, Amplify Human Devil Fruit, in defense and started to mock. "This is a good massage, Hancock." He laughed. Increasingly frustrated, Hancock continued kicking the man as the lions approached. He looked at the relaxed man and had a gleam in her eye. Without Luffy being able to react, he felt something on his wrist. Luffy looked to the other side of the handcuff attached to his wrist. Hancock was smiling devilishly at him at that moment. Seeing that she couldn't deal with him, she thought to put him in the same situation as her by attaching the other part of the handcuff to his arm. She took advantage of Luffy's stun and kicked him. Now without the effect of the more fruit model, Amplify Human Devil Fruit, he felt the woman strike. "It seems you don't look so imposing anymore, do you?" Hancock mocked, and Luffy, angered, kicked the Empress's behind as well, making her feel the pain too. You damned man!" Hancock retaliated, hitting her sore buttocks with her free hand. As Hancock was about to kick Luffy, a huge shadow appeared above them, and a lion attacked. Without a choice, both jumped away, though in opposite directions. They still managed to escape. "This isn't working, I'm taking these handcuffs off," Luffy commented, grabbing the keys and going to unlock the handcuffs. Seeing this, Hancock simply kicked Luffy's hand, making the handcuff fly. "Why did you do that?" Luffy growled at the woman. "I thought you were going to train, but so pathetic that at a moment of weakness, you want to run? I expected more from the man who said he wanted to take down the world government." Hancock mocked deliciously. She wanted to find all reasons to belittle this damned man and found one at that moment. "I swear I'll deal with you later, but don't interfere while I fight the lions," Luffy commented, turning his attention away from Hancock and towards the three lions growling at them next to the lion turned into stone. "TSK. You think you can command this Empress?" Hancock mocked. With no other choice, both leaped side by side into the group of lions. They fought as they could, despite often hindering each other. They began to punch the lions with hockey, and it didn't take long to leave the three animals lying on the ground. "It seems we're done here. Let's get the key to get rid of this handcuff. If you want to train, you'll have one and I the other while we're apart," Luffy commented, turning back while Hancock just snorted. "Hancock," Luffy commented, and the woman looked at him, seeing him pointing ahead. She looked in that direction and saw some kind of ferret that had emerged from the ground. It was a strange mole, but what was more shocking was that the mole had taken the handcuff key and looked at it with eyes shining like a treasure. "This can't be that bad, can it?" Luffy commented more to himself than asking Hancock. "This Empress has a bad feeling," Hancock murmured, stunned. Before they could react, the mole sank into the ground with the key. "Luffy. Hancock." They remained silent, no longer sensing the mole with their observation hockey. Both turned their heads to each other and looked at each other for several moments. "I don't want to be stuck with you." Sandersonia and Marigold, who were still approaching, worried about their sister, heard the shouts coming from afar, both from their sister and the man, and ran to see what was happening. When they arrived at the place, besides the lion turned into stone and another three lying on the ground, They saw a strange scene. Their sister was handcuffed with Luffy on the other side, and both were hitting each other in a kind of strange fight, since neither could move away from the other. This is your fault. Your fault. You kicked the key out of my hand. You should have taken care of the key. Me? Sorry, I'm stuck with the most arrogant woman I've ever met in my life. Says the most shameless man I've ever encountered. I should have turned you into stone. Try then, you damned Medusa. What's a Medusa? What are you calling me? It's a snake woman, like you, who's arrogant and narcissistic. What did you say, you idiot? Boom. 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 Both sisters watched the fight as they entered the forest, hitting each other without them being able to react while they stood there. After 2 hours of traversing the island and hitting each other or any animal that appeared, they stopped. Great, now we're lost. Luffy commented, looking at their surroundings. Why do you look so beaten up? We can use moonwalk, you know the technique as well, don't you? Hancock crossed her arms. Both were in dirty clothes. Luffy had left his cloak at the camp. His hunting attire was quite dirty and torn while Hancock's dress was also torn from the fight. Try using it. Luffy challenged her, and Hancock looked at him like a hawk, trying to understand why this pirate was challenging her. She attempted to jump in the air but couldn't perform a second leap, which left her surprised. These chains are special, didn't you notice how your haki diminished? Luffy remarked. He had bought chains that even reduced physical strength, which is why he received Hancock's attacks without doing anything before, just using the more fruit model, amplify human devil fruit, since this woman could even defeat Yamato. He couldn't even access the store with the handcuffs on. So what do you plan to do, man? Hancock asked dissatisfied. I don't know yet. Let's first find a place to sleep. Luffy said. The sun was already beginning to set, and Luffy doubted he would find the camp he set up during the night. This queen first needs to find a place to bathe. This empress refuses to sleep in this state, she declared with her usual arrogance. Luffy looked at her for a moment, already tired of her spiel. Fine, let's find a place to bathe then, he said, and they began to walk through the forest as if they were holding hands. Sometime after fighting off some other nocturnal animals, they found a small lake and beat up the snake that inhabited the place for them to take over. Finally something good after spending hours with this man, Hancock declared, taking off her clothes beside Luffy and entering the water. Luffy, who had to stay glued to this woman, also took off his clothes since he needed a bath and didn't want to wet his garments. Did I give you permission to get naked in front of this beauty? Hancock growled, seeing him remove his pants, but she couldn't help but look over his entire body out of curiosity, since she never saw a man with her hatred for them. I don't care what you think, just get in, I also want to bathe, Luffy commented, shrugging, leaving Hancock with a vein popping on her forehead. Both naked, they entered the water and sat next to each other, as there were no other choices. Luffy relaxed while Hancock began to scrub her body, her gaze drifting to Luffy now and then, as the pirate kept his eyes closed at that moment, ignoring Hancock. This man, I'm naked with my breasts in front of him, why doesn't he look at me like all men and turn to stone? Hancock thought dissatisfied. She began to seductively move her hands over her breasts while in front of the man. Luffy opened his eyes and saw Hancock teasing him. She gave him a seductive look, wanting to make this man fall like the others while she moved her hands over her breasts and squeezed them. They are beautiful, I admit they are among the best I've seen, but you can stop that, I don't just stare at breasts unless I'm in the mood to eat them. Luffy murmured and closed his eyes again, leaving Hancock shocked. You don't have the desire to eat me? Hancock shouted indignantly, refusing to believe there would be someone who would refuse her and her body.